Welcome to the Tip-Off, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 11-game NBA slate, 7-game MLB slate. We have a lot to get to today. I am your host, Kayla Knierim. Joining me today on this wild Wednesday, we have Eric Lindquist and Chris Spags. Fellas, how we doing?
I'm feeling pretty good. We got so many games in front of us, and what could be more fun than talking about multiple sports, preparing so many data points for 18 different games. I mean, wow, what fun, what luck Eric and I have, because it's the dream to talk about sports, right, Eric? And we get to talk about all the sports at once.
Yeah, we're talking about all the sports, but also we're going to be talking about things that may or may not be relevant within the next 20 minutes. That's always the fun part about having this many games. Yesterday, you're like sitting around waiting for the Trae Young news, twiddling your thumbs, whatever. On this one, it's like you don't have time to react to just one thing because you're on to the next thing and trying to react to that. And that's just another good reason to be part of Awesemo Plus, because without Alex's projections on a day like this, I would be mush.
Great plug, Eric.
Just saying.
And for those of you out there, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that is in season. Really quick, we want to talk about our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $20. Beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. Heading right on into our bad beats. We had another day chock full of MLB and NBA action yesterday with Eric's favorite player, Paul George, breaking the slate. So guys, how did we do last night, Eric? We'll obviously start with you.
Well, yeah, no, I had tons of Paul George. I was fortunate. I was given the opportunity to do Live Before Lock with one Chris Spags yesterday. I got to go on my second rant probably on air. Just somebody said I was like a chalk donkey. And I was like, stop this. Just stop what you're doing because it's hurtful. It's not useful and it's not good for anyone. The chalk was phenomenal yesterday and it came through Brian Goodwin and Paul George, my two highest owned players on the entire slate. Caleb Martin, somebody that I got very, very high on as we were talking through some of those plays yesterday on the tip off. And then I'd say the one bad beat that I had was the fact that as I was talking through the Brooklyn, Minnesota situation, definitely made Minnesota my bad dog, and Brooklyn goes out and beats them by 30. And I failed to bet it myself because of the 1 o'clock tip. It was tipping right as soon as we got done with our show. So that was a huge bummer to miss out on that opportunity because that would have been free money.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about how yesterday went, though. It's one of those things with NBA DFS where if you get one part of your approach wrong, it's still going to be like, oh, cool, I broke even today, even though I had 100% Goodwin, 100% Paul George, all these guys who were so great. But then you don't have Lou Dort scoring 60 fantasy points, or you have Devontae Graham scoring just 30 when Malachi Flynn had a better day and is still a very popular play. So that's sort of the nature of NBA DFS, is that, I mean, you sort of have to nail everything. But I feel like my finger is on the pulse of the NBA. I feel like we got our takes right on the show Eric and I did yesterday. And I honestly completely forgot about Eric tilting about the chalk thing. So now I have one more thing to tease him for. Though I think that's honestly like, I could impersonate Eric all day, but if I call him a chalk donkey, that's like a bridge too far. That's like,
oh guys, I'm definitely going to just slam in the chalk. And I got the top 5 players of the day. I'm excited. Oh God, Adam Duvall also did the same thing as Paul George. Yeah. So we saw in baseball yesterday too. I'm sorry. I'll give you a second, Spags. You doing okay? Yeah.
No, just Shark Killa G saying that mouth though. And I know he's not talking about Eric Rye, but I want to pretend he's talking about Eric being like, yeah, what an impression. To love Eric's mouth when he does the impression of himself that Spags does.
Oh boy. Oh,
it's the gingerbread man. It is the gingerbread man.
Not the sugar drop buttons.
That mouth. What kind of comment is that mouth though? Unbelievable.
Yeah. Also, this is like a public forum that you can never delete this from now until eternity. So, way to go! I'm gonna make sure figure out who that is and send it to his kids in 20 years.
What does that mean?
I think he's complimenting your lipstick and your general makeup appearance, if I had to guess. Or he's commenting on what a fresh mouth I have and how it should be rubbed with soap.
Yes. Hashtag I'm with her. Yes. There we go. Oh,
alrighty then. Let's get into our NBA news, shall we? Kevin Durant is out alongside Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Chris Chiozza tonight, while Kyrie Irving is expected back for Brooklyn. Spags, who looks the best for the Nets in a tough spot versus the Sixers?
So I think you sort of have to cast your lot with Kyrie Irving because there really isn't a lot of guys left. Nick Claxton, I think, is a value play, jumps out as being appealing. I know we've talked about him. Eric and I have on enough shows where he's just a guy who soaks up a lot of opportunity when there is nobody left for Brooklyn, but really just nobody left for Brooklyn with Aldridge being out, Griffin being out. I think Aldridge in particular throwing another wrench into the plans here. Chiozza in the early run of projections we had, he was still in. So I really think it's a short enough rotation for Brooklyn where Kyrie should be it's tough at his price point to say he's a priority, but I do think I'm going to treat him like a priority, especially in lineups where I get Joel Embiid, who I think really he might be the biggest beneficiary because there is nobody left on Brooklyn who's going to put up any sort of resistance against him if there even was before. But I think Kyrie, to me, takes a big jump upwards, and you now sort of make a case to play whatever Nets are left behind. If you were to get Kyrie plus one or two other Nets, I wouldn't hate it just because they have to have an outlier effort today to keep up with Philadelphia, who is still a good team, even though our pal Josh Engelman probably not feeling the same way about Ben Simmons coming through often very much recently.
Yeah, 7K on FanDuel, though. I'm still going to get to a little of Simmons in it. I hate myself for it already. I'm already sad inside, but it is what it is. Welcome to the slate where I don't think you need to play the Brooklyn Nets nearly as much as what I think you did last night. I think Kyrie Irving really is about the only guy who stands out. We've seen this line move from 6.5 to around 8 right now at a couple sports books with the help of Odd Shopper. Taking a look at that, I think that we're starting to see. I'm very surprised that Kyrie Irving is playing today. I will say that. I wouldn't say not necessarily because of any of the personal reasons, but because I thought that they were going to just completely punt this game. I knew Kevin Durant was probably going to be playing on the front end. That was part of my theory yesterday on why you just should slam the Nets against a catless Minnesota Timberwolves team. But Kyrie Irving's really about the only guy who stands out right now, projected for 40 minutes, which is outrageous. I think that only happens in a close game. I think that there is some minutes volatility that exists to that projection. And I would say if he got 40 minutes, obviously he's going to look phenomenal in this spot. 1.3 fantasy point per minute player, goes up a tiny bit, goes up a lot with James Harden off the floor constantly this season as well. So you're missing two of your three superstars. It's all going to go through Kyrie. But as far as these other pieces go, other than like Joe Harris at a weak small forward position over on FanDuel, I'm really not getting to anybody in my early runs. Obviously, it's going to change 48 times between now and lock, but I don't see any way that I'm going to get to the Brooklyn Nets outside of Kyrie today in any meaningful way.
Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, DeAndre Bembry, and Gary Trent are all out for Toronto tonight in a home game against the Spurs. So is it a night to go back to the popular Malachi Flynn? And what other Raptors stand out to you, Eric?
So it's interesting because we have 22 teams that are on this main slate today. We have 11 games. And so your priorities, I mean, it's going to really come down to where ownership lands on some of these guys. Like if they're low owned in any kind of way, shape, or form, sweet. But right now, Kyle Lowry, having gotten ruled out, we're kind of losing access to him. So obviously you think Pascal Siakam, kind of a place to go to. Grades out phenomenally well. We have him right now at 3.4% ownership on DK. I expect that to go up substantially between now and the next hour even. I think it's just going to be very reactionary. And some of this early news, this is something that I talked about a little bit on the Slate Starter article last night. Reacting to news that comes out early in the day here is going to be kind of where the ownership floods to. and you are going to have access to some really, really low owned value after lock. There's going to be news and things that happen after lock. The players get ruled out, or we're going to have somebody show up on an injury report when the 5:30 Eastern time injury report comes out. So I'm really going to kind of be lighter on some of these other pieces of value in these early games. We have a massive Washington-Sacramento game where I think there could be some studs that you're going to want to like just flood in with some of your salary. That gives you some access to some late pivots as the night goes on. There's a 9:30 p.m. Eastern time game between Dallas and Memphis. There's just so many other good spots with value and with studs that maybe waiting for your lineups to kind of emerge later in the night is a good path to go today.
So I think I'm with that page about the value that Eric's talking about, because that's something that I know has been key to his approach, trying to hang on to some of the value plays as long as possible, because they keep opening up night after night. And that's something that's worked for me after listening to Eric about that. So I certainly would not take that lightly. But the one thing I have to say, though, is Pascal Siakam. This is the thing that we talked about on Live Before Lock yesterday, was that I put it all on the line, basically saying that there's going to be a day that he goes off. And I'm hoping it's today, because I've been playing him every single day where, Chris Boucher doesn't quite have the same upside. Gary Trent doesn't have the same upside. That was what it was yesterday, where Pascal Siakam finally had a relatively outlier day for himself, just because those guys didn't have the great days. Boucher being squeezed by Khem Birch, but now you have Boucher still being squeezed by Khem Birch, as well as having Gary Trent out. I think it's another really good spot for Siakam, where I'm a little bit scared to lock in a high salary guy too early on the slate, because there's going to be some moving pieces, as we were talking about with the value. Same thing applies for the higher dollar guys too. But Siakam in the spot, to me, I feel like he's going to be a good stylistic match for San Antonio. I think the price point works. I think the upside's there. So I really don't mind Siakam at all, getting a good amount of him, even though I think you're taking on some risk if you're playing him, and then some other things open up later on. And I feel like Malachi Flynn too. I didn't get there a ton last night because I was more bullish on Devontae Graham, but like there's no other ball handlers left to really do anything, to take anything away from him now. And even Gary Trent, who's not an assist guy, like at least he's going to be getting his own shot a good portion of the time. He's not out there either. So I think Flynn, to me, feels safe, not a value play anymore, but a guy that I think I'll be comfortable getting to some amount of. But Siakam, to me, the big ticket item, I think, is the one that I would really want the most.
Yeah, I love Malachi Flynn too. I just want to let that be known. I went on a rant about the slate from a macro level, but I have to defend myself. Also, is Tyler like halfway down the chair? Is he sitting on the chair? What's happening? Okay,
Tyler might be shrinking. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
We can barely see
right
producer Tyler.
We see just a cap. That's awesome. That's great. Professional establishment.
I like the Vineyard Vines hat though.
That is awfully nice.
You both are West Coasters. Did the ground just shake where you are, or am I having like earthquake PTSD?
No, I might just have a little too much lunch, Kayla, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I did have some coffee. Maybe that's going, but no, feeling good. I
think maybe my roommate slammed a door or something, but my room just shook, and I'm like,
my floor is steadier than ever. I'm honestly never felt a more solid ground in my life.
And then,
how great for you?
That's her going. Oh, no.
All right. Terry Rozier is probable for Charlotte after missing yesterday, while PJ Washington remains out alongside Gordon Hayward and LaMelo Ball. Spags, does anyone stand out for you on the Hornets versus Cleveland?
So I think this is a spot where you can sort of make the case to play a few guys. I do think going to Devontae Graham again is not the worst thing in the world. He shot so terribly yesterday, and it was maddening because he ended up losing some run to Brad Wanamaker because he just wasn't effective out there. Then finally cleaned up at the end of the game, started knocking down some threes, making some more shots. But he really didn't have the shooting I would have hoped for, didn't have the assist upside I would have hoped for in that spot. Today, I feel like going back to him, just sort of a logical thing to me going against Cleveland, whether we have Sexton and Garland in. I think we're going to talk about that next, but or not. I think either way, it's a nice spot for Devontae Graham to get going. And Rozier, the upside's definitely going to be there. I honestly, I might be misremembering, but he's an Ohio guy too. I feel like if we want to spin a narrative, if I'm remembering correctly, and I think that's something that could be an important part. But either way, even if it's not, even if he's from Tuscaloosa, I feel like either way, I still approve of Terry Rozier as a high upside play. Charlotte just shorthanded. The one thing that I would say I'm a little bit less into is playing Jalen McDaniels today. And I know he's been good. I played him yesterday, but there's going to be a day where he is not as good. And it happened, I guess, over the weekend. But I think in the spot against Cleveland, a pace down spot, if he's going to be chalky today, and we'll see how that looks at all the other value that opens up, I feel like it's time to start to move away from Jalen McDaniels a little bit more. But, I still won't hate getting some of him, but he's always so overowned because I think people think he's a 40-point guy every night. And he's not that dude to me, I think, on the rate data. So that'd be my one caveat, is that you could play whatever Hornets, but people just love Jalen McDaniels probably more than they should.
Yeah, I think he was a product of the slate yesterday. We talked about those top 5 guys in terms of ownership on yesterday's slate. And I said, if you were going to be lower on one of them, it would be Jalen McDaniels, but we weren't lower on any of them because apparently I'm just a chalk donkey. But Jalen McDaniels is a guy that right now, if you go over to my lovely friend, the Boom Bust tool, is getting the second lowest leverage score, negative 13.1. Ownership rate at 24% at the moment, 11.1% of the time he shows up optimal. I think that's about right. I'm just saying right now, don't be flocking to condensed ownership on an 11-game slate for a guy who's 4,700. If he was 3,700, that's a different conversation altogether, because his chance of busting in that situation is so low at a lower salary point with the amount of minutes and projection that he's getting. But at 4,700, even that $300 bump for him over there, and definitely over on Fanduel where he's a lot more expensive, just kind of tread lightly today. You're going to see some of that ownership flock to some of this earlier news and earlier games. It's not going to be part of my process.
All right. In that same game, the Cavs are expected to get back Jarrett Allen and Larry Nance, while Darius Garland and Colin Sexton are questionable. Eric, who's playable for the Cavs if Garland and Sexton are in and if they're out?
So if they're in, you don't even have to deal with this team. They become the most irrelevant team, I think, on the entire slate. There's not really any single play, including Kevin Love, who I've been taking shots on routinely. We know the kind of upside he can have. I suppose if you got to a smattering of Colin Sexton at 7,300 at shooting guard on FanDuel, I wouldn't be completely I wouldn't shake my head at you and think you were the worst DFS player ever, but it won't be anything that I do in any meaningful way. Now, if you get both of them out, it is kind of interesting because it depends when that news comes out. And this is something I've never really talked about on this show or any show, but the timing of news is so important. What did I do, Kayla? What?
No, just made me laugh.
Me being professional made you laugh. That's great. That makes me happy. So anyway, something I've never talked about is the timing of news. So I'm out here on the West Coast. You have a 4:00 lock time. If that news comes out at 3:45, you're going to get some low owned pieces. If that news comes out at 3:15, people are going to be able to have time to react. There's 45 minutes. A lot of other projection sites that are not nearly as good as what Awesemo.com is are going to have time to be able to react to some of that news. You're going to get to some smatterings of Matthew Dellavedova, but now he's up to 4K. So, I mean, I wouldn't get to him in a crazy meaningful way, but 34 minutes last time out, 16.6% usage. I'm happy to get to a little bit there. And then again, if Sexton and Garland are both out, I suppose you could take a shot on Isaac Okoro at a weak small forward position. Although on FanDuel at shooting guard 4K, definitely not going to be going there.
Yeah, I would say to me, I'm with Eric on this page that if these guys are in, if Sexton and Garland are in, I don't think you can play anybody because that backcourt, these guys are priced appropriately for who they are. But now you're getting 2 more big men in. So Dean Wade probably taking a drop down in minutes. Kevin Love, another guy that I've been on the same boat as Eric, playing him a good amount, feel pretty good about him most nights. But 27 minutes with having Larry Nance in and Allen in, taking away some rebounds, taking away some assists. If you're Nance, taking away some usage as well. It's not the best spot really to go to any of these guys just because the big rotation getting so crowded. And I think we talked about a lot in the show, those guys being priced for a spot where it doesn't really reflect that, hey, Larry Nance is $7,100. You can't play Larry Nance today because he's way too expensive for a guy who, how do you cut Isaiah Hartenstein's minutes? Honestly, how do you cut Dean Wade's minutes, given the fact that he was pretty productive for Cleveland for what you expect of Dean Wade? He's obviously the one who's going to get a haircut, but there's just too many guys there. That said, though, if Sexton and Garland out, I think the big man situation is still pretty terrible, but going to a Matthew Dellavedova, I think would be a better value play than maybe people will think on the slate. Only a 0.74 fantasy point per minute guy, but the assist rate for him, 36% assist rate. That's going to play well in a team where it's just a bunch of 7-foot dudes who can't do anything besides get rebounds and maybe some shots at the rim. So I think Dellavedova playing a lot of minutes and also having the upside be the one thing I would target here against a Charlotte team that gives up a ton of assisted 2s and 3s, 10% more assisted 2s and assisted 3s than league average. That's a pretty big number for a guy like Delly who gets almost all his production just from assists.
Delly is a name I have not heard recently.
No, you have definitely not. It's been a hot
Delly.
Second. Yeah, you're probably the only one, but Matthew Dellavedova, the Australian's finest for sure. Australian for good at or decent at basketball.
He had a good run there.
He did. He looked really cool playing alongside LeBron. It was just it was like his little tiny sidekick. It was adorable.
Well, it's like everybody loves the scrappy white guy who plays on LeBron's team. Now it's Alex Caruso. It's just like they get treated like a mascot, which, look, hey, I don't want to say that it's
Alex
a bad
Caruso
spot to be in or
is
anything,
50 times more athletic than Matthew Dellavedova.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, there's guys that probably on an outdoor court right now are more athletic than Matthew Dellavedova, but kudos to him for making a career out of it. Yeah.
But lateral quickness. Julius. That's a thing. There we are.
And for those of you that are playing our drinking game, Eric's word of the day smattering is back. P.S.
Oh, thank you. Oh, okay. This is great. Kayla's chiming in. She's taking Spags' flag. Spags gave me a crap yesterday. Then now it's Kayla's turn. It's like, boom. Now the other side. Boom. It's great.
We're family. That's what we do here on the show. Just light ribbing for everybody except for Kayla and me.
It really is kind of a family dynamic. I feel like I'm back in South Dakota and I'm 11 again. This is
Just want you to feel like family, Eric. All right.
All right. Fair enough.
Paul George and Kawhi Leonard will both be out tonight on a back-to-back against the weak Pistons. So Spags, who looks good for LA with their two key stars sidelined?
I mean, I think everybody who's left behind, this is one of the situations for me where playing Zubac doesn't look bad to me right now. Playing Marcus Morris doesn't look bad. Playing Luke Kennard doesn't look bad. Playing Reggie Jackson, Batum, these guys are all going to look pretty decent. And I think this is a thing that honestly, I talked about it with Eric, and it ended up being a great statement. I felt like with how it came out in terms of being like, hey, if you have too many guys to play, you have no guys to play. That actually is not true. Like sometimes it is, they actually do have guys that are going to be good. The thing though, for me is it's hard to pin down like where the production comes from, because I think you make a case for Rondo. You can make a case for Terrence Mann. That to me is the thing where I'm just going to let the optimizer do the work. I'll get probably max 3 of these guys, but I think you do have to get some exposure because Detroit's not good. The Clippers do still have a competent team that's gotten wins when we've had the stars out. And you just have 2 guys out of the lineup who are 30 to 33% usage rate guys with Kawhi and Paul George. Opens up a lot of opportunities. So I like the Clippers a good amount. I'm going to have a good amount of them, but which 3? Who knows? It's going to be anybody's pick today.
See, I think it's actually a little bit easier than what you're making it sound out to be, because I think Rondo exists. So Rondo exists in the same way that Brandon Goodwin. Sorry, I keep saying Brian Goodwin. He was the lefty with the Nationals back in the day, and then played for the Angels. But Brandon Goodwin, definitely somebody that has minutes that had opened up because you don't have Rondo sitting there playing the backup minutes. Now you're looking at Rondo being with the Clippers and backing up Reggie Jackson. We had Rondo close 2 games ago. I don't really know how that makes me feel. Not super excited. We'll see what Reggie Jackson gets to. I think that there's no issue playing him in massive quantities either way. I think it's Zubac and Marcus Morris that are really kind of the 2 guys you want to be looking at going overweight on, both at 5,400, 5,500. It just comes down to who's going to be on the court, who really kind of has the open minutes. They haven't really shown any desire to give Patrick Patterson any run outside of like 20 minutes. So he's probably going to be capped around 15, 16. Amir Coffey comes out and plays like random minutes here and there. But otherwise, that front court is basically going to be Zubac and Marcus Morris and nobody else in that situation. So I think that makes it pretty easy there. Terrence Mann, somebody that I've randomly liked to take shots on. We'll see where his ownership comes at, because that'll be really the determining factor. I think Luke Kennard loses a lot of his luster, not having a playmaker like Paul George or Kawhi Leonard on the floor. So I'm probably going to be light on him. So I think it makes it a little bit easier for me to just kind of see where the ownership comes in on these guys, but making it Zubac, Morris is kind of my priorities. Reggie Jackson, kind of a second tier priority, but still somebody that I'm going to get to, but a little bit lighter, just because I think there is the chance that Rondo can kind of like depreciate his value.
All right. Lonzo Ball is doubtful again, while Nickeil Alexander-Walker remains out. Eric, do you trust Point Zion again versus New York after a middling effort last game?
I don't know why I hit mute on my microphone. I absolutely love Zion Williamson today. I've been overweight every single slate for 2 months. He's been the cover boy for everything that Rinpack and I stand for, which is riding the price tags up to the top of the mountain. We've reached the top of the mountain, but now we're going to stay there for a little while. I think until he gets to 10.5. I will say until he gets to 10.5, I will be overweight on somebody who now is starting to see that assist rate come up. I talk constantly about his rebound rate. He at least has some double-double potential here of late. Always expected him to be a little bit better rebounder than what he has been early on in his career. Steven Adams on the floor surely does not help that number, but Brandon Ingram comes back into the fold, and I know that it looks like a lot of shot attempts. He's attempted 19 shot attempts on average in his first 3 games back here. But I still just think Zion does enough things on a basketball floor. And I know that people will see that Knicks matchup doesn't look like super appetizing to be aggressive on Zion, but he just has a ceiling. He has an absolute ceiling, and he has a consistency level where he has one of the smallest standard deviations. If you sort by standard deviation on Fantasy Cruncher and look up at the top for anybody playing over 10 minutes per game, he's 3rd on this slate. Absolutely love Zion. You're getting such consistent production here, and he comes with a ceiling. Hard to beat that.
Yeah, I have him for 50 fantasy points today, kind of accounting for the rates that it's still small sample size ball that we talked about on the last time Eric and I did a tip off show where Zion basically playing point guard has had a meaningful jump in his assist rate to 30%, a little bit above that going into last game. And last game was a weird one. Like it's kind of crazy to say, but Zion only shot 13 for 21 in that game. And it probably felt like he should have shot 18 for 21 because that's what he's been doing recently to have that upside. Just one of the best, guys attacking the rim, guys who doesn't really take a bad shot. That's sort of what his game has been to the point that there was an article I think over the weekend where they're talking about Teresa Witherspoon as one of the coaches now for New Orleans was like, hey, Zion, take a pull-up mid-ranger. I just want to see you try it, see how it feels. They want him to take less valuable shots just because he's so good that he only takes good shots, but a guy at his usage or in his ability should be taking a little bit more. And I think against New York, I'm on the same page. I don't like the matchup on paper. It's slow. It is a team with some good bigs who can clog the paint, but Zion, just a force of nature where like, is Nerlens Noel going to stop him if he's playing court time against Taj Gibson? Like, what is Taj Gibson going to do besides get track marks on his back when Zion rolls over him? Like, it's a really good spot, I think, for Zion overall. The opportunity being the ball handler. And I kind of think last game was Brandon Ingram sort of asserting himself to be like, hey, like, I'm still here, guys. And now we can go back to Zion doing what he does and getting a little more success. And wouldn't shock me here if he broke the slate just at a price point people maybe won't want to pay. Only under 5% ownership projected on DK. Just a wild number for a dude who's been doing what he's been doing.
Yeah, I talked a lot about him yesterday. Basically said that there was no way that he was going to be popular today and that I was going to be way over the field. I'm just curious, if you're not looking at it, he's got a 62% field goal percentage on the season. I want you to guess what his effective field goal percentage is, which is the number that basically it accounts for it being a 3-point shot or not. I want you to just guess 62% on the season from the field. What's his effective field goal percentage?
So it should be lower then. I don't track effective field goal percentage and I barely know what it is.
It'll always go a little bit. It usually goes a little bit higher because it's basically saying like Steph Curry is somebody that has a disparity between his field goal percentage and the effective field goal percentage because he shoots so many threes. Basically what I'm saying is that he has a 62.5% effective field goal percentage, meaning he does everything inside the paint. Like he does absolutely everything. So I think in a game environment like against the Knicks where you're kind of like playing a little bit mustier, it's kind of like getting down and dirty. I really like going to Zion and being over the field there.
Wait, is there a difference between true shooting and effective field goal percentage? Because I track true shooting, which is 3-pointers, like weighted, free throws weighted. I don't know if there's a difference between the two. And now I'm wondering because I'd never track effective field goals, but I'm wondering if that's because.
Yeah. So effective field goal percentage is basically just a number that adds that extra point in for 3-point attempts. So it's basically just a way of gauging whether or not somebody might be a 38% 3-point shooter and like a 42% field goal percentage. And it just looks gross. I think a guy like Davis Bertans would stand out who basically only shoots threes. Joe Harris, who only shoots threes. This is the exact opposite of that is kind of what I'm saying, where Zion is just he knows who he is. And that's another fun characteristic of him as a basketball player. And I know we're talking a lot about Zion, but it's worth it for me. I think that he just knows who he is. And it's very rare to see a 21-year-old basketball player transcend to this next level who isn't trying to be an Anthony Edwards who is putting up 30 points a night by chucking 25 shots, half of them being from 3-point land, being ineffective, getting a minus 30 plus minus rating. Zion's just so fun to watch.
Agreed. All right. And our last bit of key news for the night. Jamal Murray is out for the year after tearing his ACL for Denver, which is a tough situation for their championship aspirations. Tonight, they'll move on to face Miami. So Spags, who looks better for Denver with no Murray?
So this is another spot where I think everybody gets a little bit better. The guy who's going to jump out as one of the best value plays currently on the slate is probably Facundo Campazzo, projected to be getting 28 minutes from Awesemo. I think that number looks pretty solid. Jokic is a guy that I think people will start to go to a little bit more. I don't have an issue with it, but I do think if you're going to get Embiid at less ownership, I might be more inclined to go Embiid's way just because it's a really good spot against Brooklyn. Just, what we talked about earlier with them, not anybody going to be able to meaningfully defend him. Spot they would like to win, I think, for tiebreaker reasons and all that stuff that's coming up with the playoffs. So I really think overall I would still favor Embiid over Jokic, but hard to argue Jokic gets a bump. Will Barton's the one that I think people maybe will sleep on a little bit more. People may think, oh, Aaron Gordon playing point guard more, even though he's been pretty much a straight rim runner. That's definitely a possibility that he just sees more possessions. But I think with Campazzo there, Barton's the one who really can rebound, can take the ball up court. He's not going to give the ball up in those spots. So I think to me, Barton's one that ownership going to be there a little bit, but I think people will sleep on the opportunity and go more to Campazzo. Campazzo's a good play, but I do think Barton, just a guy who benefits from having, no Murray out there, and Barton does a little bit of everything.
I don't like Campazzo today. I will not. I refuse. I don't think I've been on him a single time in any of these absent games. I just don't think that there's a ton of upside when you're being surrounded by guys like Will Barton, Michael Porter Jr., and of course, Aaron Gordon, the new acquisition, and Nikola Jokic, who is your front runner for MVP. We see a $4,600 tag over on FanDuel. I'm looking through a box score, and I don't see a single outing. I see one in his last 20 that he put up over 30. I think on this slate, you need to be selective about raw points a little bit more as well. 3,700 over on DK, like maybe a couple of shots here and there, but even as good as his assist rate can be, he's only had one double-digit assist game in his last 20. So in terms of like an upside, I don't see it really there. And I think that's also being reflected in the boom bust tool. He's got the highest negative leverage number over there on the day. $3,700 on DraftKings might look appealing, but it won't look appealing in a couple hours when we have other places to go with our value, when we have other pieces of news that falling out from the sky, basically, with 22 teams in play. So Facundo Campazzo, I can tell you right now, is definitely going to be my fade of the day.
All right. And with that, sports fans, don't forget to get access to all the great Awesemo Plus tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there with an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools on Awesemo.com, including player projections, ownership projections, our premium Slack channel, lineup builder, and much more. If you're only looking to play NBA DFS, then sign up now for our Awesemo Plus NBA weekly package for only $16.95 or our $4.95 NBA weekly express package, which gives you full Awesemo Plus access to NBA Showdown and single game contests. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Eric, quick question. Are you hitting the golf course after this?
Yeah, I have a big tournament on Monday, Tuesday, the SCGA Mid-Am. So 25 and old. Yeah, so I've got a big golf tournament to get ready for. So I put this polo on just to make myself know that I have to go practice as soon as this is over. Then I get my second COVID shot. All the things happening today, just flying around. Big day, big events.
Well, you look the part.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay.
I look like a Disney prince who's about to go golfing is what I'm learning.
No. Spags missed that yesterday. Don't let that go to your head.
Oh, he thinks he looks like a Disney. He kind of looks like a Disney.
She said that.
It was my fault.
Not.
It was
okay. Tyler fact checking. I love this. Tyler, best producer in the game.
But like a Disney prince, but like the Weasley one who like gets dumped for like the handsome poor guy who like Belle is into, and then I could see it. It's just like he's the one that like they crap on en route to like her finding a true love.
If Eric is a prince, Spags is Gaston.
Okay, I can live with that.
You can live with that? Okay.
Yeah, Gaston. He had a vibe.
Disturbs me to see you, Gaston. You didn't see that coming.
Did not.
Did
not. We love us some Disney Pixar around here, don't we?
Yeah.
Pixar especially.
Shrek DreamWorks. Just kidding.
Oh, I watched Wall-E the other night too. Very nice.
I still haven't seen that one.
You have to. It's adorable.
Mm-hmm.
There's like no dialogue really until like more than halfway through the film, and I didn't care. Like didn't even notice.
Yeah, his love for Eva, adorable, beautiful, or Eve, right? But he calls Eva. Yeah, he's adorable, beautiful movie. Like really one of the more artistic movies. I usually do like a little more dialogue. I also don't like singing in my films if I can keep it away from the musical vibes. But that's one movie. Quiet garbage everywhere, fat earthlings in space, and it all works together in Wall-E. Highest remarks for me in my.
Did we just become best friends, Spags? No, we didn't.
No,
but it would be nice if we did.
I have lost control. Let's head back over to the NBA. In these battles between stars, which player would you rather have in NBA DFS or prop bets tonight? First up, we've got Zion Williamson facing Julius Randle tonight in a battle of ball-dominant big men. Both are expensive with clear ceilings. Who do you want in this one-on-one, Zion or Randle? Prince Eric.
Oh, thank you.
Wait, Prince Eric is in Little Mermaid.
Oh my God, look at that. Look at you. Well, that's better than Nurse Eric, at least. I'll take it. I'll jump on with that one. Julius Randle coming in just slightly higher owned than Zion over on FanDuel as I'm looking at it over there. I think that like you're looking at two plays that grade out very similarly. I got to stick with my boy Zion. You're getting even a tiny bit of ownership difference between the two. The minutes difference is basically 1 minute. It's pretty negligible. So it becomes kind of a, who do you want to roll with? I think Derrick Rose also being back in the fray is going to affect a little bit of Julius Randle's production. He's played a large bulk of this entire season, seen a lot of upside games with and without him, but I would stray on the side of just common sense. knowing that Derrick Rose is going to affect his usage going forward. Derrick Rose actually a fun guy to take some tournament shots on. We know the kind of upside he can have in any random spot. And against the Pelicans, who third worst team in defensive efficiency in the NBA, fire it up. But I know how good the Knicks are defensively, but I've talked about this being a good situation for Zion and not many other Pelicans. So happy to ride with my guy.
Yeah, I'm with Eric here. I think Zion would be the play that I want more, just for the reasons too that the Knicks just have enough bodies in there now that I think Randle's upside gets a little bit tougher to pinpoint. Whereas Zion getting a new role, getting to play point guard more, theoretically seizing a little bit more back from Ingram that he gave up last game. I think all that bodes well. One other fact too that I was saving for this spot because I knew we were going to talk about Zion twice, but the Knicks kind of surprisingly, all the talk about their defense playing slow, they give up 11% more shots at the rim than league average, and that does portend pretty well for Zion, given that the vast majority of his shots are going to be at the rim, as Eric was talking about earlier. So I think Zion in this spot going to have high upside. The fact that he's going to be under 5% owned, I don't want to get too crazy here, but I imagine I'll have at least double that. I think probably for me, Zion at 20% would be a pretty nice number to get to, whereas I don't feel that way about Julius Randle today.
Okay. Kyrie Irving will be the lone superstar Nets player available tonight. Joel Embiid's minutes have stabilized, and there may be no one to stop him on Brooklyn's side. So Spags, who wins in this one-on-one, Kyrie or Embiid?
It's a tough one because I do have Kyrie projected better, and that's just in terms of raw fantasy points. I do think like he looks like the better play, but if you had to really think about the game and how it goes, is there a possibility here that Kyrie comes out a little bit lethargic after taking a few games off for whatever went on with him and Dennis Schroeder, that you could search your own viral clips out there and then see his tweets and maybe some things that made Kyrie unhappy, and a mercurial unhappy Kyrie can be something that doesn't always perform the best in DFS. So I think on a median projection, I'll probably end up with more Kyrie, but I think I'm going to go out of my way to make sure I get Embiid more than I probably should. So in that respect, I think I would take Embiid in the one-on-one just because he has a lot of upside, I think, in the spot against Brooklyn. We know the sort of rumor about, or innuendo, the data about Brooklyn, really, that they just give up big production of centers over the years. But in this spot in particular, just nobody out there to compete, nobody out there to really impose anything upon Joel Embiid. It wouldn't be surprising for me to see him have an outlier day. So I like Kyrie. Won't shock me if I get Kyrie more, but I'm going to go out of my way to get some Embiid just because I think there's a possibility here that he makes it a very uncomfortable slate if you don't play him at all.
Yeah, Joel Embiid, I think, was on path to just completely destroying the slate the other night. I was gigantically over the field on FanDuel. That was really kind of a bummer. 25 minutes, 36 points, and just completely eviscerated the Mavs in limited time. The blowout was the only thing that constrained him there. I think his ownership would be double what it was if he got the full run of that game. I also think that it probably proved, having not even played a fourth quarter rotation and getting to 25 minutes, that we're looking at 32, 33 minutes of Joel Embiid, which is a really good thing to be looking at. Now, Kyrie Irving is getting that 40 minutes number. I don't dislike Kyrie Irving, but I think shutting down one guy as opposed to shutting down a couple, you have Tobias Harris on the other side. I think he's better than anything that the Brooklyn Nets have to offer today. So, I mean, the team looks a lot better on the Sixers side of the ball. I think Joel Embiid being the centerpiece there, 1.61 fantasy points per minute over on FanDuel in the season is just kind of a silly number. So I know Kyrie sitting at like 1.3, a little bit higher per minute with a little bit higher with Harden and Durant off the floor, but God, it's going to be hard for me not to want to just get over top of the field that you'll be in a center position where you only can play one and you're looking for that upside.
Zach LaVine has recently shown big upside at his price point, and tonight he faces a hapless Orlando Magic squad. Steph Curry is more expensive against an equally tanking OKC team. Eric, who do you want more in this one-on-one? Pay down for LaVine or pay up for Steph?
So, I mean, we're looking at a different question, I think, on DraftKings and FanDuel, just because they play different positions over on FanDuel. LaVine sitting at 9K is just kind of a big number. He's been playing really, really well here of late, starting to put it together, figuring out how him and Vooch are going to be able to share the court together. But you have Bradley Beal for 500 less in a Sacramento game environment. That seems like a spot where I'm going to kind of be prioritizing Beal, who is playing through injuries, but like got up to that mid 30s minutes, played fantastic against Utah. It was kind of a remember me game for him, showing what he is capable of against a really good Utah Jazz team. Steph Curry, obviously we like his upside. I think he's just at 10.5 on FanDuel. Just a little bit too expensive for me. I know 45.4% usage is pretty nifty. 53 real points. That's not something that I'm going to argue against. But going up against OKC, this isn't a game where necessarily they'll have to push him. Have we gotten news on Kelly Oubre being in or out? Because that would also be another. He's out. Okay,
yeah,
so
him,
just double check.
And I think there's somebody else out too.
Okay. So that's definitely a little bit of a bump up there for Steph, but I still think for the most part, like Levine, like I'm not like super high, I think, on either of them today from any direction. I'm looking Steph 10-5 over on DK, Levine 8,800. I think I'll take the cheap route with Zach Levine against Orlando, but not really feeling one way or the other about it.
I think for the ceiling, I might be more inclined to get to a little more Steph here. It's going to be tough, I think, to get to either guy on DraftKings because you're probably going to, there's going to be a good amount of people spending money on Kyrie today at those spots. But Steph, to me, gets enough of a usage uptick without Kelly Oubre out there that I feel some degree of confidence that it wouldn't be crazy to see him have an outlier day. The real big issue that I have with Steph is that, Oklahoma City's hung into some games that they probably shouldn't have hung into, including, I think, yesterday against Utah, that was where they were just playing way better than it seemed like they should. And it could be the case against Golden State, but there's also, Golden State with how they run so high octane. If they're running good, they could make this uncomfortable. So I think you have to take Steph in the hopes that he could be the initiator of the blowout, the guy who could end up really putting it down in Oklahoma City, coming off of a tough spot against Utah. That's back-to-back for them. Steph coming off fresh, I think, could be a positive. So I would take Steph here, but I just put Levine in there because, he is a guy who has the upside going against Orlando. It wouldn't be shocking. They play terribly, but they play a little bit slower too. I like the discount on Levine. And I think Eric's point about going to Beal too, who's maybe not projecting the best, does also lose a little bit of luster for Levine, but Steph, paying up for him, getting less Oubre in the mix, getting Nobre in the mix, getting more opportunity for him. I think it's going to be a positive for Steph. So the price point's ugly, but I think you're still better at paying up to get to him rather than taking a little bit of a discount and going to Zach Levine.
Okay, y'all. One of the biggest edges in sports betting is always shopping to find the best line. Betting lines change by the minute and can vary greatly depending on which book you are using. That's why it's important to use Awesemo's Odd Shopper to find the best line available on the game or player prop you are betting on and give you the edge to help you beat the house. Head on over to oddshopper.awesemo.com where we compile the best bets available for game lines, player props, and player and team futures, all updated in real time. It is time for the MLB portion of the show. First up, we've got Biggest Bat. Let's head to the diamond for some of the top bets and plays on tonight's MLB DFS slate. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? We've got Alvarez plus 325, Mancini plus 325, Acuna plus 340, Tucker plus 350, Gallo plus 350. Guys, discuss.
You can go first, Eric.
You want me to go? Okay. Yeah. So I think looking up and down the board. So this is kind of an interesting, I always like targeting home run props when I can get somebody at the top of the order, because this isn't necessarily DFS where I'm looking to get the homer with a couple guys on base. Not that any home run is something that you would be arguing against, but Ronald Acuna is going to get a bunch more at bat, like maybe one more at bat. That's enough for me to kind of side with him when you're looking at somebody like Kyle Tucker. I'm not necessarily sure where he's going to end up being in that order. I know it's against Michael Fulmer. That's a guy that I like to target a lot in Detroit. But with the left on right matchup there, but I don't know what it is. It seems as though like Kyle Tucker could be in the 7 hole and it wouldn't be surprising to me. I would kind of like want to wait a little bit longer to see that. Jordan Alvarez, somebody that I've always been high on from a home run perspective. So it'd be him for plus 325, but I'll go with Acuna for $15 more. I think that sounds like a good number. Hitting leadoff. I think he's about to really turn it on here. So I'll be early to the party there.
Yeah, I'm actually on the same page here. I think the lefties from Houston are a little bit overvalued today because, Fulmer, as Eric was talking about, just not a great pitcher from what he's shown so far, came in with a pedigree where I think he could still maybe get there, I guess. But what he's shown so far is really bad numbers, small sample size against righties, but a 2.6 whip and 11.5 xFIP, 430 ISO allowed. I think the righties are going to be the ones who could benefit more than the lefties here. His lefty splits have actually been relatively competent. It's small sample size, so I'm sure there's going to be some lefties get to him, maybe even today, but it feels to me like they're forcing a lefty-righty narrative with those odds there. And Kyle Tucker and Jordan Alvarez. I'd rather get Alex Bregman at slightly worse odds, but out of the 5 that we listed, Acuna, to me, I agree, hitting lead off a good spot. Also the fact that he's so high priced in DFS, over 6K, like you're getting pretty good odds on a guy who is also going to be a premier play everywhere else. So I think that checks out going against Nick Neidert, a guy who's had absolutely nothing so far in the majors, doesn't get strikeouts, only a 13% clip for him. That's probably going to get better, but it's still a guy who really doesn't have a lot of ability. So find some odds on Alex Bregman, take him would be my first choice. But out of the 5 that we have, I think going to Acuna would be the safest pick out of that 5.
And now, biggest arm. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best strikeouts over bet tonight, and which is the worst? We've got Joe Musgrove over under 6.5, John Gray over under 4.5, Dustin May over under 5.5, Charlie Morton over under 6.5, and Lance McCullers over under 7.5. Spags, we'll start with you.
So I think for me, it's going to be Lance McCullers, and I'm sort of torn on this one because Morton's going to be a chalky play. He looks good. I think Dustin May taking the over there just doesn't seem the wisest, given that they have a pretty quick hook with him. And Musgrove too, I think you're paying a bit of a premium there. He's been really good, but you're paying a premium on the fact that he just had a no-hitter. Like that's something that's going to be an important part of a guy and his odds for the most part here. So I think taking McCullers, who's just been reliable, 26% K rate going against a Detroit lineup that we know is not that good. I know Akil Baddoo, a guy coming in, starting hot. It's always a fun story, but a dude you're still expecting to regress for the most part. 5 hitters who strike out above league average at 23% aggregate K rate. Historically, they strike out 28% of the time against righties. Like I think McCullers here is in a really good spot. He's DFS chalk today. The projection on him actually a little bit less aggressive than I would think, but I still think the strikeout ability is there for him. So I would take that bet as my favorite for the biggest arm here.
Yeah, and again, it's a lineup full of righties there for Detroit that I'm not really worried about them in general going forward. Lance McCullers, just over 10 strikeouts per 9 is historically. So I'm happy to go to McCullers as somebody who, so long as he can just get a little bit longer into this game, shouldn't have any problem racking up Ks.
All right, now let's head back to the NBA for No House Advantages prop or not. Here are some of No House Advantages props of the day for key players. So guys, do you like the over or under on them? And how many points would you assign? We've got Joe Harris over under 14.5 points. Eric.
Yeah, so looking at a lot of these Brooklyn Nets, it's going to be very, very interesting to see where other people in the public come in on them, because I'm not going to be super high on them in general. That was kind of something that I'm kind of planting my flag in. So I'm going to continue to be taking unders for somebody like Joe Harris. Not going to be somebody that I'm overly invested in from a DFS perspective. And on NHA, obviously you're looking at just the individual number on points, and can he get there? Absolutely, he can get there. I mean, he just knocks down 5 threes. You're there, and that's something that's well within Joe Harris's wheelhouse here. My thing is that I just don't really like a lot of these plays in general. It's going to be closer to 50-50. I think you can look at some other props, like his rebound prop, 5.5, taking the under there. I think that one really sticks out as a strong under over on NHA. But from a points perspective, still, I would be shading a little bit on the under. It looks like Alex feels that way as well. That's a good thing to kind of have backed up. I'm just not crazy high on the Brooklyn team compared to what I think the public might be today.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would go over here just because I think, I have a project for 14.9. Awesemo has them a bit lighter. So it's not like a close thing or a particularly appealing spot on either side, really. I think Joe Harris, I would favor the over by a little bit, but when this props list was made for today's show, we hadn't had the update put in for Awesemo reflecting all the injuries and all that. So there are now some much better props available. Kevin Porter Jr.'s assist prop with a lot of the Rockets out. That's one. Looks like a really good over. Joe Harris, to me, I think if you're playing him now, given the fact that we do have some injuries that opened up, the Clippers also opening up some value for guys like Reggie Jackson, I think is a spot that's going to be one you would want to attack more. So Joe Harris, I'd still favor the over, but I think at this point it's probably more of a 2 or 3 pointer, maybe even a 4 pointer. I believe in him a little bit more, but you're definitely not going to clear this one easily. This is a prop to me that you're probably sweating out till the end of the game and hoping that the Nets just don't get blown off the court.
All right, Spags, back to you for Pascal Siakam over under 33.5 points plus rebounds plus assists.
So this is the best points plus assists prop for Siakam, according to Awesemo, is the points plus assists. For him, that's got a 78% chance of hitting. But I do like the points plus rebounds plus assists because A, you're going to have Khem Birch taking some more minutes from Chris Boucher, which I think is going to be a net positive overall. But B, with Siakam, you just know there's more opportunity overall for him because you don't have Gary Trent, you don't have Lowry, you don't have Van Vliet, you don't have all these guys out there who do different things. That I'd rather just try to capture the idea that Pascal Siakam's going to do something today. And I think that's sort of the main thing for No House Advantage that appeals to me here, where, hey, maybe he doesn't quite get there in points, maybe he doesn't quite get there in assists, but when you put them all together, you're looking at him from the perspective that we normally look things at from fantasy. I feel like Siakam has a very good chance of getting the over on all of those categories combined. So in that spot, I think Siakam to me would probably be around a 7 or 8 pointer or No House Advantage, taking the over on him and just buying in on the fact he had the good day yesterday. I think he keeps it going again even more easily today because just not having Gary Trent in there at all.
following the Disney theme. Put them together and what do you got? Bibbidi bobbidi boo. I mean, that's really what it is. You put all the stats together and Siakam is more than happy to get there. Don't oh my gosh me, Kayla. Don't oh my gosh me. You have to expect these things from me. You really, really like Siakam in terms of capturing some overs on the prop markets. Just to remind everybody, NHA, the props open up in the morning. They don't get to react to news the same way we do. So we can react to news, and that just makes him so much more enticing to be capturing in the prop markets. So definitely be hitting the over on that. And again, he's going to do something. I really like that way of putting it. So that's why you're basically capturing points, rebounds, assists. He's going to be involved. He's going to play big minutes. Happy to go to Siakam.
I wasn't knocking it. It just caught me by surprise, Eric.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm just an irrational person. It's fine.
And last but not least, Terry Rozier, over under 25.5 points plus assist. Eric.
So, I mean, we're combining two things in this situation. That's nice. Yeah, I like the over. I think as long as we're good to go with Terry Rozier, he's going to be in the starting lineup. As long as he's good to go, he was probable. I'm happy to be investing in the over on him there. A lot more fun and easier to stomach than Devontae Graham chalk day. I can tell you that much. That is an unfun thing to be remembering going forward, that it's not necessarily the best spot for him. But I like Terry Rozier hitting the over here. He is the guy. You have no Ball. You have no Hayward. You have no possibility of no Washington. Happy to be going that direction.
Yeah, I think the Rozier spot taking the over would look good to me as well. Awesemo has it as a 61% chance of hitting the over, but I feel a little more confident, I think, than that. I have him at about 27 assists plus points today, so I think he clears it pretty decently here. Playing against Cleveland, I think, is certainly a spot. Not a lot of defense that's going to be offered there. They are much better in terms of just slowing a game down to make it ugly, but the shooting for them, giving up 48% shooting from the floor, that's good. I mean, honestly, Rozier could get there on points alone, but the high numbers that they give up defensively are just going to make things better for Rozier. As well as honestly the fact there's probably going to be some miscommunications getting Nance back in and Allen. Like those guys are good defenders, but you have them in with Kevin Love, you have them in with Harkenstein, you have them in with Dean Wade. It's a lot of dudes have to figure out where exactly they're going to slot in, how they're going to defend, how they're going to cover things adequately. So I think everything kind of bodes well for Rozier. This is one of those things that on the data level probably doesn't pop up a lot, but I think if you think about it in the basketball sense a bit more, I feel pretty confident taking the over. And there's still some better props out there, like the Porter Jr. one or some of the Reggie Jackson ones that you can check out under the No House Advantage projections on the site too. But I think overall, to me, Rozier, the 7-pointer feels about right, taking the over on his points and assists.
And as always, don't forget to play on No House Advantage, our sponsor, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a deposit bonus of up to $20 for new signups. Beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. Heading right on into good dog, bad dog. There it is. In real life, there is no such thing as a bad dog. In betting and DFS, there are a lot of underdogs who may have no chance in their game. So guys, who's a good dog to target tonight and who's a bad one? Spags, give us your good and bad dog for the sake of time.
My good dog is going to be Toronto for all the reasons we've talked about already. They are at home in Florida, whatever. They're the place that they have to call home right now until Canada decides to let them back in and have their lives back. That's really what I'm rooting for more than anything. But playing against San Antonio started to show some signs of life. I think it figured some things out, but defensively still leaves a lot left behind. I think that could give big days for Toronto's side. So I think taking them, honestly, I would take them to win today. Not the highest implied probability to win. So I think that's going to be a decent money line bet, no matter where you're getting it. And then for my bad dog, I think I'm still going to take Detroit as a bad dog. This line is going to get a little bit more close because of no Kawhi, no Paul George, but the guys they have behind are competent scorers. Rondo being in is a positive thing. Morris has been pretty good this year. Reggie Jackson's been scoring the ball well. Nick Batum's been a new version of himself. Like, I think these guys, even at a depleted Clippers lineup, still better than Detroit at whatever they are right now. So I think Detroit be the bad dog and Toronto be my good dog.
I think Oklahoma City is going to be my good dog. I think 11.5 is too many to be giving up against a Golden State team. No James Wiseman, no Kelly Oubre. Obviously, Steph Curry, he's had some great history in OKC, hit that remarkable shot right in Russ Westbrook's grill in that overtime game that still sticks out in my mind as like one of the better basketball games I've seen. But I really do think 11.5 is a ton. And obviously we have Kayla on here, so she's going to make another phone call and get me another win with OKC. So that's nice.
I was going to note that. Yes, I called Sam yesterday, which is why they hung in there
I know. I told you that was too much. So that was a nice win in the column. That was my only bet that I made all day. That was enjoyable. Anywho, my bad dog. I'm going to Miami Heat. Now, this is strange because I got this line at 4.5 this morning, and I thought it was kind of the one that did grade out as like the best bet on the entire board for me. It's already moved to 6. So like we're kind of seeing some Vegas bettors, some sharp Vegas bettors. Not that I'm one of them. I like to think that I am, but basically moving this line a full 1.5. I think it might have been a little reactionary by Vegas. Jamal Murray being out doesn't really affect them as much, I think, as what other people might. It definitely affects their playoff chances, but in a regular season game, if you're telling me I can get Aaron Gordon or Jamal Murray, I'm going to want Aaron Gordon. And so that's a big addition to that team. I think that 4.5 number was just too low when it opened. It's now moved up to 6. I still think that you can get it in good by going against Miami -6 Denver.
All right, we are up against the clock. So Eric, really quickly, give us your make or break.
Make or break, fading Facundo Campazzo.
I think my make or break is going to be playing Pascal Siakam too much once again. That's probably the play that will bury me no matter what I'm doing in life.
And Spags, what's your fade of the day?
Fade of the day would be, I don't even know. Ownership's going to be moving around a lot. I feel like my fade of the day is probably just San Antonio writ large. I don't see anybody here who looks meaningfully important to me, but they are going to all be owned around 10%. So San Antonio, I think, is a play that I probably don't like, even though I do like the Toronto side.
I already said Facundo Campazzo.
You hate that man so much.
Phrase.
Wow, this was the Disney show, wasn't it?
No passing parade.
All right. And with that, thank you to Eric and Spags. Thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. I will never be wearing this lip gloss ever again. MLB Live Before Lock is coming up next.
You made the chat become prison so fast. Just a bunch of worked up dudes fighting over.
We'll be back tomorrow here on the tip off at 3:30 Eastern. Have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow.
Nice mouth. Like.
Hakuna Matata MLB fans. How you guys doing? That's going to be stuck in my head the rest of the day. I was just chewing Eric out between shows here a little bit. If you caught the end of the tip-off show there, that's going to be stuck in my head. I'm going to be walking around singing it. I hope that's not the same for you guys. I'm here, Terry McBride here with Alex Awesemo Baker himself and Max Smotritskiy. Guys, how you doing? You guys going to be walking around humming that song the rest of the day?
That's a good one. I don't know if Facundo is ever going to be able to leave that new nickname behind. So
yeah, every time I see his name now, that's just going to be in there. How'd the baseball slate go for you guys yesterday? I got smoked. I did not have many Marlins at all, and they kind of ran away and hid early on with all the power that came out for them. Didn't really land on the right pitching in too much of a share, so it was an ugly day for me. How'd you guys do? Anybody hit anything? Have a decent day? Rough one? Yeah, a little bit. Those Marlins, man, it just speaks to the variance in baseball. With when a team like that jumps out and gets out ahead and not many people are on them, you can really see how that has a major impact on the standing. So it was an interesting day and lesson learned again, or relearned at least in variance.
Fried went on the DL today.
Say again?
That game. Fried went on the DL today after that game.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. Wish we would have known that yesterday.
That would have been some handy info to know going in. Yeah, jeez. Well, hopefully he's all right. Did you see what it was? It was in anything long term or just
I'm not sure, but they did skip him a day. So now I'm like wary of all the pitchers that get skipped a day.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That happened with Rodon, right?
Exactly. I was going to mention that
last night.
And he's been an injury history guy through his career too, which is that was a concern that leapt out to me yesterday. But guys, just before we get into things, we do have a couple pieces of business to take care of off the top. So you guys know by now that we take all of our shows, everything except for Live Before Lock. So basically any of the content you're looking for across all the different sports that we cover, we take it off of YouTube and we put it up on all your favorite podcast networks. So if you're out walking the dog, if you're at work, whatever the case may be, you miss a show, you can always catch up later in the day. Remember, sometimes things change between when we broadcast and when when you guys catch up later on. So always be aware and keep up with the news god as well. But you can find all of our different shows on your favorite podcast network. We're doing a little giveaway around podcasts. So if you hit us up with a 5-star review on whichever network you find us on, leave your name, leave your Twitter, or your email name rather, leave your Twitter, give us a way to get in touch with you. Every single week, we're raffling off 1 week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. So it's your review is going to be good for up to 1 year after you leave it. So leave us a 5-star review. We're raffling off a week of Awesemo Plus Platinum for everybody who does that. You get in there, download our podcasts, hit the like and subscribe button, guys. We've got free ownership projections up on the site today. A lot going on the site. We cover everything, anything there's a slate for, we cover. Something that I don't pay much attention to. I'm more, I guess, a traditional boxing fan. But Max, are you a big MMA guy?
I wasn't until the lockdown, and then it became one. I was like the only thing on. Dana White, the guy that runs MMA, was like a genius in putting on fights when everybody's stuck inside with no sports to watch. So
yeah, absolutely.
Dig into it now, and in the betting side and the DFS side, and we have so much info on our side. Like the Top Fighters tool is like the greatest thing ever for DFS, and it's sports. Sorry. It's like one of those sports that is still kind of not known by most DFS guys. So there's still an edge as opposed to the sports that have been around for a while.
Yeah, which I really like about it. And for me, like I said, it's not a sport that I'm into. So for me, I need the site badly. Like I can talk baseball all day long, but I need the tools on the site. And you mentioned it, that Top Fighters tool that we have is just dynamite. If you're going to jump into a slate, pulling that thing up, seeing the probability of somebody winning, probability of a knockout, probability of a 100-point score. It is a killer tool. So the reason we're talking about this, we've got UFC 261 coming up. Somebody named Usman is fighting somebody named Masvidal. I assume that's a good fight. I don't really know, but I'm going to jump into that slate. That's on the 24th. I will have lineups in there, and you guys can utilize our tools too. For MMA DFS fans, we got a promo code UFC 261. That's the letters UFC and the numbers 261. Gets you 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus MMA. So UFC 261 when you sign up gets you your projections, our ownership, that Top Fighters tool we were just talking about, gets you into everything. It's valid through fight night on the 24th. So again, UFC 261 promo code, 50% off your first month. Sign up now, guys. We've got a ton of content coming up for it, and the guys do a killer job. It can make somebody who knows nothing about the sport like me into a winner. So stop guessing, start winning, like I did with it. Jump in there. Promo code UFC 261.
You guys are bringing tears to my eyes here.
It's so good.
Well, that's why I threw it to Max, Alex. I can't just throw it to you and have you brag about the great tools that you built. It's good to get somebody who's using it. But yeah, it's awesome, man. It's making us money, and we appreciate it. Hopefully everybody out there is doing the same with it. Guys, jumping into the slate. just to do a little bit of an overview, when I was looking at things today, looked to me a lot more, at least by comparison to yesterday, like a hitter's slate than a pitcher's slate.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely, we had a bunch of aces going yesterday. Today, a lot thinner pickings on the pitching side, but I think we can get into some of these bats. And then on the weather side of things, really the only game that stood out to me was the probability of rain in Baltimore. Let's start there. Alex, is that something for you? What are you doing as far as the Baltimore game? Are you concerned about the weather there?
Definitely. I pretty much crossed that one off at this point because, it's a little bit far in advance for radar, but all the weather models say 100% chance of rain, like solid through like midnight. So I think this is as safe as they come to get postponed. Yeah,
that was kind of how I was looking at it as well. And I'm always reluctant to take a game out of the player pool until we've got something concrete or at least radar and forecasting that looks that heavy. And that's always important. You can get a little window of the future by looking at that. If it's going to be light or if it goes to cloudy or whatever, maybe we can play it and maybe we can scoop some low-owned hitters and one. But yeah, I was seeing that the same way. And it's a shame. I was actually thinking about maybe throwing some of those Mariners bats against Matt Harvey or the Norman Bates' mother of version of Matt Harvey that we've got at this point. So anything, if that game happens to play, Max, is there anything you're eyeing up in that one just for people who might be a little less risk averse than I am with it?
Yeah, it's all the hitters, right? Like Dunn and Harvey are both not very good. So yeah, neither guy really strikes out anybody. Baltimore's always been like a sneaky hitter spark where it's pretty short down the lines. And the ball flies pretty good there in warmer weather. So yeah, for me, it's all the hitters. Stack both teams up, but I don't know. It's like a real long shot to play right now.
Yeah. It's I was about to say you're playing with fire, but that doesn't make sense because we're expecting rain. But you're definitely walking a very fine line with this one if that's the way that you go. Alex, was there anything before we move on? By the way, this one had a 4.61 implied total for the Mariners and a 4.99 for the Orioles. So we were expecting runs here with those two pitchers. Anything, since we kind of just jumped into the game by game there, anything for you, Alex, if this one does happen to play, just kind of all about the bats? Do you have a preferred side of the bats if this one goes?
Well, I think if it does go, then we'd have to be worried about the game being shortened.
Yeah.
So I probably wouldn't play it even if things are looking like they might start the game. But if it did play to completion, this would be the best bat game on the slate probably. I don't have much confidence in Matt Harvey at this point. So maybe Seattle, who doesn't usually pop, would be a good target.
Yeah, like I said, they were popping up for me a little bit, and the one thing I did notice on Harvey in his first couple starts, he had a better xFIP than his ERA was showing. It's over 2 starts and only 9 2/3 innings, so it's basically irrelevant. But a 3.90 xFIP to a 5.59 ERA, so not nothing, I guess, if you're looking to cling to Matt Harvey like he's clinging into the league. But I think we can move on from this one.
One thing I want to get your guys' opinion about is, man, like pitcher strikeouts just seem to be on the rise this year a ton.
Yeah.
I think I saw like the average strikeout rate in the league is like 25%, and a lot of guys that aren't that good at striking guys out, like Matt Harvey, like even are posting pretty solid numbers this year. So what have you guys made of that so far?
Yeah, Harvey put up 9 strikeouts in his 9 2/3 so far. So around the strikeout per inning and definitely getting back into it. Last year, he was 15.4% over only 11 innings. Year before that, 14.7 in 59 innings. So not very good. But coming back to Alex's question, there was a narrative before the season, and Max, maybe you heard this or maybe you've got a different opinion. But a lot of the guys, and especially the heavy spin guys, were really talking about the raised seams on the new baseball and how that was enabling them to torque the ball a little bit more and gain even more spin on the ball. So that was something I noticed with Tyler Mahle, who had gone from like a 2,100 spin rate on his fastball to like a 23 last year and made a gigantic difference. This year, his first start, and I didn't get a chance to check his second, his first start this year, he had gone from a 23 to a 25, which is ridiculous. Yeah. So if it's something like that, and that's carrying across all of baseball, we could see monster strikeout numbers. Max, was there anything that popped to you about that?
No, I mean, still a small sample size, right? But that definitely makes sense. And also the colder weather doesn't help.
Yeah, for sure. And it's been some pitching environment for sure the first couple of weeks. And we had a clunky, weird year last year, so who knows how that might be affecting things. But the piece that I found really interesting was that spin rate thing. I'm a big spin rate fan anyway. It just makes a lot of sense to me in terms of the dynamics of the baseball and what that does for the rest of a guy's arsenal, how breaking pitches work off the fastballs and everything. So that's one I'm intently monitoring all season long. Good question. So let's move on, guys. We've got a better one coming up. We've got the Philadelphia Phillies with Zach Wheeler on the hill and a 4.19 total at the New York Mets with David Peterson going in a 3.89 total on the Mets side of things. Getting a little bit of Peterson. He was somebody who looked somewhat interesting to me on the board. I'm curious to see what you guys think of the two pitchers in this game. Max, what do you think of Peterson, or are you more on the Wheeler side of things?
I don't think I'm on either, right? Peterson is not a guy like I would usually play. Low swinging strike rate. Although, like Alex was saying, he's been striking guys out this year, but maybe just a small sample. He still gives up a ton of fly balls, some hard contact, and Phillies has a ton of right-handed power. So I'm actually on the Philly stack side, and their total seems low, so I think they're going to go under owned. I can talk about Wheeler as well. Definitely great stuff, like good fastball, but the guy just, for whatever reason, isn't a high strikeout guy. So on a slate like today, where there are some high strikeout guys like Morton, like McCullers, we'll talk about later, he just comes in as a secondary option for me. And the Mets lineup is pretty tough.
Yeah, that Mets lineup against right-handed pitching the last two seasons, 9th in baseball with a 196 ISO, 9th with a 21.8% strikeout rate, so good at limiting strikeouts, 6th with a 109 WRC plus, and 2nd with 264 home runs hit. Only second to the Yankees, of course, with over 300. That's against righties the last 2 years. Alex, are you seeing that similarly? Do you have any love for Peterson, or am I on an island on that one? And what are your Wheeler thoughts? A reasonable price on DK for 8,400, 97 on FanDuel. A little bit expensive for the one pitcher side for me.
The one thing about today's slate is I feel like the top end of pitcher isn't nearly as good as last night. I mean, that's like, now that I'm saying it, it sounds really dumb because it was like Bieber and Trevor Bauer last night. But I think Peterson, for that reason, like he's not crazy, but he's just an average strikeout guy in a matchup that isn't ideal for striking guys out either. So I definitely see more negatives than positives targeting him.
Yeah, what had stood out to me a little bit, and the reason I landed on him was he was somewhat mid-ranked in our top starters tool, which you guys can check out at the site behind the paywall, of course, and it ranks all the different starters, gives their top value percentage, and then gives the ownership share. So he kind of ranked in the middle of a relatively flat board, and he stood out for being one of the guys with a decent leverage score, and for only 6,400, or excuse me, a decent difference, which what we call the leverage score between his top pitcher probability and his ownership. And for only 6,400 on the FanDuel slate, on a slate where I want to pay for some bats, that's kind of what led me to that decision. So I think I can get to him there. It's a little bit more out of play for me at 7,100 on the DK slate and pretty appropriate ownership. And then anything with bats on either side, then, since you guys aren't really going to the pitcher so much. Max, you mentioned the Phillies bats. Anybody you're really zeroing in on, or is it kind of up and down the lineup?
Bohm seems pretty cheap, has a lot of power. Yeah, like Hoskins, Bohm, Real Muto. The bottom of their lineup is pretty weak actually here, with Segura, Torres, and Quinn. I mean, Quinn's really cheap. He used to steal some bases. Yeah, just the top of the order for me. And now that I'm looking at it, just maybe a 3-man of Hoskins, Real Muto, Bohm. Harper does hit lefties pretty well, so maybe include him as well. But like, I'm not interested in McCutchen, Segura, and Torres just because they don't have any power.
Alex, what are you seeing for the Phillies if you were going to a Philly stack?
Yeah, I like the Philly stack here just because they have a decent matchup versus Peterson, and they got a pretty solid lineup these days. So Hoskins, Harper, Real Muto, they got a lot of power, and I like the fact that Harper may go a little bit low owned today because of the lefty-lefty matchup. I'm seeing really low ownership figures on him. So that's the spot where if you feel like Peterson's going to get blown up, then maybe Harper only sees a couple appearances versus the left-hander. So I'm definitely comfortable going to him as a contrarian play. And then on the other side, I will mention Wheeler's price is better on DraftKings than FanDuel, so I think he's in play there. But Brandon Nemo leading off appears to have a really good salary on DraftKings, so he looks like a nice value play.
Excellent. Yeah, I noticed Nemo definitely stood out there at 3,200 on DK, 33 on FanDuel, definitely in play. I think you're getting a nice discount on Dom Smith, 2,900 on FanDuel, hitting third in this lineup, 4,200 on DK. Not that much of a premium to pay over on DraftKings site either. So the Mets are actually a little underpriced. You get hitters down the lineup as well. Michael Conforto for 3,300 on DraftKings, 29 on FanDuel. Jeff McNeil, 3,300, 2,500. There are some discounts in that Mets lineup. So a good spot for them. They're going up against a very good pitcher in Zach Wheeler, like we talked about. Guy who's pretty decent at keeping the ball in the yard, so it suppresses the home run marks for me a little bit for the Mets here. But they do hit righties well, like we talked about. So there's definitely some upside here. Is that a spot that we're going to, Max, for you? Are they on the board for you? It looks like they're getting a little bit of positive leverage on. I think that was DraftKings I just saw. I'm just clicking to the two different top stacks tool. A little bit of negative leverage rather on the DraftKings slate, and a little bit of positive on the FanDuel slate.
There's just so many good stacks today. It's like the opposite of last slate, where I don't see myself going to the Mets just because there's a lot of contrarian plays I like in other spots.
Makes sense. Yeah, it's a lineup that I'll take some shares of it, but I agree with you. I don't think that this is one that's really going to pop in this matchup for me in this spot. There are better spots to get to. I do think with the value that they're presenting through some of those salaries, they might end up in more of the lineups than I'm expecting once I start crunching, which will be interesting. They might need a little bit of special attention with a cap, given that we're not projecting them necessarily to be one of the top stacks, but those prices might vault some of these guys into contention. Anything else from this game? Any favorite bats or any one-offs or anything like that to call out? Either one?
They make decent one-offs, like you were saying, just because of the salary relief. And they do all have home run pop. It's not like Wheeler can't be had at all, Whereas I wouldn't stack against them. I don't mind trying to get a solo shot.
I like that. All right, cool. Moving on to the next game. We've got the Texas Rangers with Kohei Arihara on the hill and a 3.41 total at the Tampa Bay Rays, with Josh Fleming going with a 4.68 total. Interesting little pitching matchup in terms of a basically unknown commodity in Arihara, who has made 2 starts, pitched 9 innings, and struck out 2 hitters, coming over from the NPB with a 6.9 K per 9 over his NPB career. So not a big strikeout guy over there, which we touched on last week. But now we've got a little bit of a working sample. 4.1% swinging strike rate so far in his 9 major league innings. Not somebody I think we can go to here, but maybe somebody to target with the Tampa Bats. Fleming, on the other side of things, had a dynamite debut last season. He threw 32 innings in 5 starts. A little bit of work as a hybrid role out of the pen for the Rays. Came through 5-0 record, 2.78. Thank you, MLB.com, for the little blurb in 7 outings. He had a 22.6% called plus swinging strike rate with a 9.4% swinging. Decent little spot for him going up against the Texas Rangers lineup that was 27th in baseball the last 2 seasons with a 26.3% strikeout rate. Are we getting to any Fleming? I assume we're not getting to any Arihara. Are we getting to any Fleming on this slate? Alex?
I do feel like this game isn't the greatest for pitchers. I was kind of intrigued by Arihara because the projection models on Fangraphs have him at 6 to 7 Ks per 9, which corresponds to like an 18 to 20% strikeout rate. The matchup versus Tampa isn't a bad one for getting strikeouts, but the fact that he's only gotten a couple of strikeouts over 9 innings is a pretty big deterrent for that. So I think I might hold off until he gets a go in there. But Fleming, he had a 19% strikeout rate in 2020 over a limited sample, but nothing too exciting. The matchup is appealing versus Texas, but I'm a little bit worried that he might not go super deep in this one because he hasn't pitched this year so far. So maybe you guys would have some more insight into that, like what we can expect from Fleming today.
Max, what are you expecting from Fleming today?
The most he went was 3.2 in the spring. So I would say 5 tops, especially with the way Tampa treats their pitchers.
So is that a spot that you're willing to take some shots on, or is that too limited for you in terms of his length and his upside?
So I'm like really boring on slates like this. For me, there's 3 pitchers I want to target like heavily, and I'm going to mix in the bats just because there's so many good bat spots. It's kind of like the opposite of yesterday's slate, where the bats were so chalky and there were so many pitching options where I was feeling like I could go a little bit off the board with the pitching. But here, like for me, there's 3 main pitchers, and then I might mix in like a lower owned guy here and there. But I'm just going to play with the bats more. Like I really like the Tampa spot for bats here.
And who since you mentioned it there, who are you picking up on the Tampa side of things? Who stands out to you in terms of bats that you're getting to either as a stack or as one-offs? How are you looking at that Rays lineup today?
So for me, I looked at the StatCast numbers for Arihara just so I could get a feel for how he's pitching. And he's given up 6 barrels in 33 events. That's pretty insane. So we know Tampa really swings for the fences. Like that's their philosophy. They really just home run or strike out. So you can go like Zunino here, like home run or strike out guy, like a 2-event guy. Zunino, Adames, Meadows, Rosarena, and Lowe feel like a really good high upside wraparound stack from 8 to 3.
I like that. Now you're speaking my language with that offbeat wraparound stack. I love that. That's an interesting approach. And yeah, Zunino is definitely a different kind of guy. When we talk about wraparound stacks, a lot of the time we're talking about one of those leadoff hitter types that you can use, alternate leadoff hitter. But yeah, Zunino with the ability to just blast one over the fence, and he's got, decent doubles power and everything as well. The 37% projected strikeout rate for the season is always a concern. But like you said, you're rostering him kind of knowing that you're getting a strikeout.
You're also facing like really a 6% swinging strike guy. So that has to go down.
Right. Also very true. Alex, do you prefer the Rays side of this one in terms of bats? Do you prefer Texas, or are you getting to both?
I like the Rays side because we're just seeing low ownership on them, and they have a team total of almost 5. So I feel like this one, I understand why they're low owned, because on Draftkings, they're extremely expensive. On Fanduel, a little bit cheaper, but it looks like on Fanduel, the top of the order is really high owned and the bottom of the order is really low owned. So I see some opportunities there to get a little bit contrarian.
Excellent. And then on the Ranger side of things, are there any bats? We've got a ton of lefty bats in this lineup going up against a lefty, at least to start the game. Got to be a little bit concerning about the effectiveness of the top end of this Texas lineup with all those lefties. And maybe it's a little bit of appeal on the Fleming side of things. So if it seems like I'm trying to find an excuse to play Josh Fleming, and I'm not entirely sure why. I haven't run any crunches yet, but that stands out a little bit to me. A lot of lefties and a lot of heavy strikeout lefties in that lineup. So it could be an opportunity there. But again, with the innings being capped, it's a little bit concerning. Would that concern you, Alex, in going to the Rangers as a stack, though, with all those lefty matchups and kind of a limited team in terms of their offensive ability in general anyway?
On today's slate, I feel like anything goes maybe, but it does feel like a really bad spot in Tropicana where it's a pitcher's park and then the platoon matchup is bad. So the only reason we might consider going to Texas today would be game theory, but I don't even think they're going to be so low owned today. So let me pull up our top stacks real quick. About 4% ownership at DraftKings, which is about the same as their top stack percentage. So I don't really see any reason to go to Texas today.
Yeah, it was a stack that really, when I was writing them up earlier, Joey Gallo stands out, but Joey Gallo always stands out because of his ridiculous power. So I get a decent little home run mark on him, but he's going to be the highest owned hitter in that lineup most likely. And I just don't love the pieces around him. Max, is this a spot you're willing to go to at all, or should we kind of move on? We've covered most of the bats, I think, at this point.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're also going to get the Tampa bullpen for a bunch of this just because it is Fleming's first start, and they have a decent bullpen, as we saw in the playoffs last year. So, yeah, it's not really a spot I want to go to, especially like Texas aren't good hitters, really. Like, I know they smacked the ball around yesterday, but they're all kind of low event hitters, like not a lot of power there other than Gallo.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, it's basically Gallo that stands out for the power marks, and then everyone else is just kind of depressed in the power marks. Not excellent hitters in terms of their hit tools or anything demonstrable.
Yeah.
A lot of strikeouts in the lineup. So it's just, even if it's not a spot to roster the pitcher, it's just, and I've said it, and like I said yesterday, they've burnt me every time. But I don't think it's a spot I'm going to be going back to again today, going to the Rangers. So all right, looks like we can move on from that one, and we're getting kind of close to the halfway point. So guys, we've got all sorts of different packages at the site. You guys love the content that you hear on the shows. I imagine you're probably winning with all the content from the shows. You pick up a bunch of different tips from what we talk about, but really the best way to get the full Awesemo.com experience is by picking up one of our subscriptions. We've got a lot of different plans at the site. So if you're just a single sport player, if you only play baseball, you can pick up a baseball only subscription. You can do it on a weekly basis, a monthly, an annual, whatever fits your needs and your budget. We've got a good subscription for you. But the best bang for your buck is probably our $29.95 Platinum subscription. That's the weekly rate. That gets you access to all of the site's projections, tools, content, ownership for every single sport we cover. And like we talked about earlier, if there's a slate for it, we're covering it. So $29.95 all in gets you access to everything, including the lineup builder tool, which you probably see a lot on different shows that we do. Oh, wait, you don't see them because they're behind the paywall. We use that a lot on the game plan shows. Alex gets into it, and it's a great tool for hand building lineups. So if you're a 3 max player, it's fantastic for that. But if you're a 150 max player, it's great to get hands-on with the slate, move the pieces around, and get a feel for how the optimal lineups are coming together in a sport like basketball. Get a feel for which stacks fit together in a sport like baseball. It is a great tool, even if you're using an optimizer to build out 150 lineups. By the way, we also host the leading optimizer on our site. It's a little bit of an add-on, but Fantasy Cruncher, we can add that onto that price for you and get you set up with that as well. So $29.95 a week, get on the Platinum subscription and come join us. Stop guessing, start winning. And by the way, there's still more, because we mentioned earlier in the day, we've got an MMA promo going on, 50% off your first month of MMA. Promo code UFC261, valid through fight night on the 24th. Gets you our top fighters tool, gets you the projections, gets you the ownership, everything you need. Stop guessing, start winning. Awesemo.com. Getting better at those reads.
Nice.
Guys, coming in, we've got next game up. Detroit Tigers with Michael Fulmer on the hill. 3.45 run total, taking on the Houston Astros in Houston with, I think, my favorite pitcher of the night on the hill, Lance McCullers, and the Astros have a 5.15 total. Am I seeing this all wrong, Alex, or is Lance McCullers the best pitcher on this slate tonight?
That's an interesting question, because I guess I'm not completely sold on him. He had a little bit of an off year last year where he only had a 22% K rate. He's picked it up nicely this year with a 32% over 10 innings. So the first 2 starts were pretty solid. But the matchup versus Detroit, they certainly not a great team, but they've been about average in every category this year. So I do see them as maybe not a huge positive as far as the matchup, with their K rate being a little bit lower than average. And I'm just not completely sold on McCullers as being an ace. So I'm just a little bit leery of him being as high regarded as he is today.
So that's interesting. And that we saw that a little bit in his 55 innings last year, came in around a 25% strikeout rate overall, which was a little bit of a downturn from, coming back from his injury and everything. This season in his, 2 starts, he's gone 5 innings in each of the starts, struck out 13 of the 41 hitters he's faced. So that's a 31.7% strikeout rate, which I found encouraging, but super, super small sample. So we've got to be worried about that. And what stood out to me in terms of looking into that a little bit, last season in that sample where he struck out fewer hitters, he was still inducing an 11.4% swinging strike rate. In the small sample this year, 10.9%. So inducing fewer swinging strikes. We'll see how that all comes out in the wash. Max, what do you want to do with McCullers here?
I got breaking news for you guys. 3 Astros just went on the IL.
Oh, no.
Including Altuve, Bregman, and Maldonado.
What?
Yeah.
Is it a COVID thing?
I mean, Astros are one of the only teams that have full stadiums, right? So at home, I was assuming all of them would be vaccinated by now, but I have no idea. Three guys going injured list at the same time, though. Seems
that's
a weird coincidence where it could only be really one thing, right?
It's not avocado.
It could be.
It looks like one of our favorite lineup sites also scratched Jordan Alvarez.
Okay, so that's 4.
We might lose this game at this point.
Yeah, if we lose this game, that would kind of suck.
That would suck for my plans for my pitching. That would suck for my plans for my hitting. It's knowing that we're taking a lot of bats out of this Astros lineup all of a sudden. It doesn't, for me anyway, make Michael Fulmer any more interesting, but it makes the Astros stack potentially a lot less interesting.
I'm gonna
knowing that it's breaking news. Yeah, Max, how are you handling it?
Let me sell you on Fulmer, right? On DK, he's basically like what, 5,800, and he was once a pretty highly touted prospect. He's up a full 3 miles an hour on the fastball this year over last year. He started the year in the bullpen, so it could be just because he's trying to throw harder out of the bullpen. But last start, he went 68 pitches, still a good swinging strike rate. He's super cheap, like I mentioned, and now he's probably going to face a bunch of minor leaguish guys where their best bats are out. So I don't know. Am I crazy?
Well,
Alex, what do you think? Is he crazy?
I think it's crazy, to be honest. Like, and it's not because Fulmer is like a bad pitcher, but it's just like the pitch count wasn't there the last game. He was at 68.
Yeah. I'm assuming like 80 tops, right?
Yeah, 80 is a pretty good projection. So it's like you really needed to break your way in those 80 pitches.
Yeah, and for me, it's just not there yet. Maybe he does come back to being that great pitcher. Just to put a little button on that, 2016 he was his debut year. 159 innings, went 11-7 for the Tigers. 3.95 xFIP that year and a 20.4% strikeout rate as a rookie. Pretty good foundation, but he's been weak and unable to pitch for a complete season since then. Coming back in 2018, he went 132 innings, 4.29 xFIP, which is okay, but gave up 19 home runs in that sample. That's kind of bumpy, 1.29 home run per 9. Missed all at 2019, came back last year, gave up 8 home runs in 27 2/3 innings, lost 3 miles off of his fastball. I noted that the other way.
Yeah.
But yeah, he has gained it back. To me, that was exactly what popped about that, though, Max, was the fact that he's probably just ramping up because he was pitching out of the bullpen. Just so you see that a lot. Guys just throw harder because they've got less work to do. So that would be the concern there, along with the pitch count. So for me, it's still going to be a stay away. But it is interesting going up against, what is probably going to be more of a replacement level type lineup for these Astros who were really popping earlier. I'm going to lose my home run pick now from Jordan Alvarez, which sucks. That's a bummer.
Yeah,
I was really liking that lineup.
Their projected lineup just came out, and it's got guys like Taylor Jones and Jason Castro, Abraham Toro in it. Wow. So I don't know, guys.
Lead off Miles Straw.
Miles Straw is leading off. I mean, they still have Brantley, Correa, Gurriel, Tucker, right? But other than that, slim pickings.
Yeah, that core, I could still play 1 through 6 to some degree, I think, right? So build in a little bit of Straw just for his speed. That's all you're getting from him, speed and run scoring. But then you do have quality hitters in Brantley, Correa, Yuli Gurriel, who's having a fantastic start to his season after a down year last year. Kyle Tucker is pretty good lefty-lefty, and I would throw Aledmys Diaz into that. A little bit of pop in him.
Yeah.
Reasonable pricing. Alex, is it a spot where maybe the public is going to get away from them knowing that all these star-level players have scratched, so maybe it keeps them a little bit interesting, just given that ownership's probably going to nosedive?
I think, well, the tricky part of this all is that now you're going to have a lot of cheap guys batting high in the order, so it could cause the opposite effect where the value could get better just based on the same guys batting higher. So we'll wait until we get an ownership run, but I'm kind of tempted to bet this game now because I don't think the line has moved at all since this news has been announced. Of course, this is where the guessing game comes in because sometimes the sports books know about all this stuff before the bettors. So it's do they know that these guys are going to go on the IL? Because that could be interesting.
Yeah, and if they're already pricing it in, that definitely changes the nature of that bet. Hey, a great spot that you can check something like that, though. Oddshopper.awesemo.com. We lay out all the different bets from all the different books for you side by side so that you can find the best price on the bet that you want to make, whether it's a player prop, whether it's a line, whether it's an over-under, any of these different things that you want to bet. Shop all your odds before you make your bet. Again, stop guessing. Start winning.
So let me get your guys' opinion on this. If you wanted to make a bet based on this, I'm thinking like maybe betting under
that's
9.
what I would do.
Okay.
That sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, because you still have McCullers, right? So the Vegas is still going to bet on McCullers, basically shutting down the Tigers. So under is definitely the bet here.
Nice.
Yeah, we had a 3-4-5 total on the Tigers coming in. I wouldn't expect that to change, and then the other one should plummet. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Any love, speaking of those Tigers, Bats, anybody have any love for them on the DFS side of things? Any contrarian stacks coming in? Maybe grab some of their limited power in like a Wilson Ramos, Nomar Mazara, Renato Nunez, Jonathan Scope kind of stack from the middle of the lineup. Anything like that to throw against what should be probably a pretty popular pitcher?
I'm kind of into it because I was building some lineups by hand earlier. I noticed on Fanduel the ownership of the Tigers is super low, and our projections at about 1.5%. And we're not seeing high totals this year so far. So they have a total of around 4. That's not like that far off from the 5 to 5.5 of the highest ones on the slate. So we have them as about a 4% chance of being the top stack tonight. And like the thing is on FanDuel, you can't really use the extra money for anything productive, which is why they're so low owned. But this one is just like betting against the chalk, where like in baseball, a lot of times the best stacks all like don't come through. And then you're left with one of these random stacks going off. And the Tigers seem as likely as any of the bottom of the bunch.
So what I'm hearing then is Alex wasn't excited about McCullers. He thinks the Tigers are a little bit interesting. Max, are the Detroit Tigers the Miami Marlins of today?
Nah, come on. McCullers is pretty good. Like that curveball used to be insane, and he used to throw it like 50% of the time. I think now he's throwing it a little bit less, around 30%, which is why I think his Ks were lower last year. I just think he's trying to go deeper into games, throwing more fastballs. I don't know. I'm still not on the Tigers. It just feels like a lot of strikeouts in this lineup. They did all love hitting toward the Crawford boxes yesterday. Like every home run went that way, I think, except for Ramos did it the opposite way. So, I mean, it's a great park. I would rather bet with them than like going with the Marlins against Morton. So that's just my take.
Okay. Interesting spot. All right. So there's a little playable contrarian option for maybe a few shares of stacks out there. Take a look at the top stacks tool, find the ownership that the public's going to be at, get a little bit over it, gain a little bit of leverage. Easy game from that regard, assuming that we're right and they go off. Not that we're saying they're definitely going to go off. We're saying there's a chance they go off. You guys know what I mean. Moving on. We've got the Marlins with Nick Neidert on the hill and a 3.38 total in Atlanta, taking on Charlie Morton and the Braves. Braves have a 5.23 implied total. I think that's the highest on the night at this point. So, yeah, looks like that's our highest on the night. And with the Astros coming down on the board, probably going to stay the high point. Are the Braves a spot that we're looking to go to pretty heavily here against Nick Neidert? Braves pretty decent against right-handed pitching. Max, is that a spot for you for bats?
That's the chalk spot, right? Like they have the worst leverage score I think, in our top stacks tool. So, I mean, yesterday the ball was flying here. I like for some reason none of the internet meteorologists told me that this was Coors Light yesterday. Because there were some home runs going out like that weren't barrels at all. They had like a 20% chance of being a hit, and we're going out of the park. So I mean, Neidert is not good at all. Like I didn't have a lot of data on him, but low swinging strike rate. He tops out at 92 on his fastball. He's not missing bats. The Braves are in a great spot, but Neidert is a ground ball guy, so you could just like the way you fade the Braves here is just hope they hit a bunch of balls on the ground.
Alex, are you seeing that the same way? I assume there's no love for Neidert in your lineups, but are you seeing that the same way as maybe he caps the offensive upside on a very chalky Brave stack? So maybe it's a point at which we can divert from the field a little bit, or is it somewhere you're willing to go and swallow some ownership and just play a really good looking stack?
I always am a little bit scared to go to like a stack with as much ownership as the Braves have today. The fact that this Baltimore-Seattle game is likely going to be postponed makes this really one of the top spots of the day. And it's baseball. Like, you can hit it hard and get it out. So, like, that'll be probably what I'm hoping for here, because I see like 7 out of the 8 batters in our projected lineup have over 10% ownership. A lot of them much higher than that. So that's pretty scary in baseball.
Yeah, that becomes very difficult if you get one of those games where, you know, even if they have a couple hits, scratch together 4 runs or whatever, we see that all the time, a 4-run game where it was just essentially irrelevant for DFS purposes, but the team won, they're fine, they're feeling good. So yeah, that could be a little bit concerning. There are bats that I love, so if anybody out there is trying to put them together and you can figure out a unique way to do it, they are a good team in a good spot with a lot of very good bats. I just don't know how we're going to put them together in unique enough ways to really make them viable. We saw the Marlins explode yesterday for offense, a bunch of home runs. Max, I think it was you that mentioned Adam Duvall. Alex, apologies if it was you, but somebody did mention Alex.
Wasn't me.
All right, so then it was Alex. Boss man knows. Boss man knows. So Duvall had a great game. We just saw just a monster performance out of this Marlins lineup against Charlie Morton now. Very good pitcher coming in. We saw him take apart Max Fried yesterday. Morton comes in 2 starts this year, both against the Phillies, went 5 innings in 1, struck out 5, gave up 3 runs on 6 hits, 2 walks. Second game, 6 innings, 7 strikeouts, 1 earned run on 4 hits and 1 walk. So pitching pretty well in his 2 starts, 34.4% combined swinging, called and swinging strike rate with an 11.7% swinging. That's down slightly from the 12.1% swinging from last year. And his overall strikeout rate was down last year from 30.4% in 2019 to 24.7% last year. Max, is this a spot? It sounded like you were maybe planning on going to Morton. Is this a spot that you're excited about? Charlie Morton taking on these Marlins and what is, I think, still a weak lineup despite what we saw from them yesterday?
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to eat the chalk and go over here. A 7.6K is just such a stupid price. Like, you should be in the 9Ks in this spot. I don't know. I'm hoping there's some recency bias and people overproject the Marlins. I also actually think the reason the Braves are going to be chalk here is because, you know, there's like the Braves got that. So I just think this whole spot is going to be overprojected for bats a little bit, or at least I'm hoping so on the Morton side. So yeah, I mean, I don't really see anybody else in the 7K range that I would play other than him.
And Alex, just taking a look at the top starters tool, it looks like we do have Charlie Morton ranked up top. We'll give that one away. He's super chalky. Everybody kind of knows it anyway. But is that driven a lot by the price, him coming in at 7,600? That's a great price on him. Or is it just driven by a matchup and just his actual probability of being the top starter in terms of just raw projection, raw points?
Yeah, I think Morton is probably my favorite pitcher on DraftKings and Fanduel because of the price, mostly because the matchup versus Miami, they are a rebuilding team, but they don't strike out a ton with their projected lineup here, just about league average. So that is probably a little bit of a plus matchup for Morton. What I'm seeing is in the first 2 games, he averaged 80 pitches, which is about what we expect out of the Rays starters. Or sorry, I keep thinking he's a Ray, but he's on a different team this year, Atlanta. So my bad. Anyway.
Similar pitching philosophies, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I actually included that in my column today. From Houston to Tampa to Atlanta, it's 3 organizations with relatively similar pitching philosophies. So you were good.
So I had the right idea.
Exactly.
Thanks for covering for me there. Anyway, yeah, I think it's just a slate where there aren't any like elite guys. So Morton has a really good track record. He had a 23% K rate last year. He's been up a little bit this year. So when I went back a few years, it looked like last year his Ks dipped a little bit. So I'm willing to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt that he's able to get it going a little bit more this year, which I think that makes him look like a great play today with this matchup.
Yeah, for me, you know, Max, we talked about that spin rate narrative earlier, and we know Morton coming from Houston, where he basically became a different kind of pitcher based on those pitching philosophies and based on things like focusing on spin rate. Do you think that's something, if that narrative is true, this could be a year where we do see Morton's case spike back up? It looks like we're trending in that direction. So does that make you just a little bit even more excited about Morton, and maybe it overcomes some of the ability of some of these Marlins hitters to limit the strikeouts?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they're worse at striking out versus right-handers anyway, as we saw versus Inola, than Fried. And I'm kind of willing to give the Braves pitchers a pass with Fried yesterday, just because he did get hurt. Right. So, who knows what happened with the Miami hitters yesterday. But yeah, I mean, Vegas is also with us, projecting them for 3.3 runs. So.
Yeah, I think it makes all the sense, and getting to a pretty big share of Charlie Morton, I think probably is going to be my move here as well. Any love for the Miami Bats coming back the other way in a little bit of a contrarian spot? Looks like they're about dead even in terms of their top stack probability and their ownership on one site, and on the other site, they're drawing a little negative leverage, actually. Guess everybody's still excited about what they did yesterday. Any reason to go to them against Charlie Morton here, Alex?
I guess the short answer is no, just because Morton is a good pitcher, and I mean, the long answer is that if you really want to bet against top teams, you got to go to some teams that aren't in good spots, and Miami is one of them. But I'm a little bit worried about what you guys are saying about how, because of last night, people might be going back to them tonight. I don't know if that's fully integrated into our ownership, so I'll have to see if that is true tonight. But any reason why they might be a little bit popular is a good reason to fade them.
Yeah, makes sense. And that's a spot where, we're not looking to go to the offbeat teams when they're already getting overowned, getting attention. So yeah, maybe we shop around a little bit better for a little bit more value. I think we can move on from this one, guys. Everybody, make sure you hit the like and the subscribe button below. Everybody knows where to find the like, but make sure you subscribe as well. It's how you get all the notifications when we go live. You don't miss any of our shows. Like we talked about up top, if you do miss a show, get on your favorite podcast network and download it. You can listen to it while you take the dog out for a walk. Give us a 5-star review. Get entered to win a free month, whatever I said at the beginning of the show, of platinum subscription. And we're raffling those off once a week. I think it was a free week. Raffling them off once a week, and that your review will be good for up to 1 year. So that's on any of your favorite podcast networks. Guys, moving on to Cleveland Indians with Zach Plesac on the hill. 3.72 total, taking on the Chicago White Sox with Carlos Rodon, who we touched on earlier. White Sox with a 3.85 implied total. Rodon skipped a day, questionable with injury history already. Is it a concern for you, Max, in terms of how long we might see Carlos Rodon here?
Yeah, and the price at 8.9K, and just the guys around him feel, I don't know if safer is the word, but definitely better projected. And also, I think his ownership right now is around 21% on our top pitcher tool. So that feels high for today's slate. I mean, I don't know. He looked all the way back, right? He was throwing like 97 miles an hour on the fastball versus Seattle. The swing and miss stuff looked great. But I don't know how much they trust him to go deeper in the games at this point just yet. Like you said, they skipped him a day. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the spot I want to go to Rodon, where we have like Morton, May, and McCullers that feel a little bit better.
Alex, you willing to pay the basically full freight at this point, 8,300 on FanDuel, 8,900 over on DK for Rodon, or is it a spot you're looking to avoid?
I'll play the devil's advocate a little bit here, because I feel like in baseball, they have so many games in the season that if a guy's not 100%, they're just not really going to play them. Of course, with Max Fried, apparently that might have not have been true. So I might be speculating a little bit too much here, but Rodon did have a great first game where he struck out 41% of batters over 5 innings. So that was encouraging enough for me to take a shot. Potentially. The only thing is the matchup is Roth versus Cleveland, who does have one of the better lineups in the league. So it comes down to the ownership a little bit. It doesn't look like the ownership for Rodon is super low, so I'll probably be leaning more towards maybe Morton and some of the other guys.
Yeah, Rodon's going to be interesting to watch this year. And we saw him in 2019, really in 34 inning sample, I guess I should say, with a 29.1% strikeout rate, but a 10.8% walk rate, a 1.44 whip over the course of the season. Last year, coming back from another injury, 17.1% strikeout rate, but only a 7-inning sample. So we really can't put any weight into that. But we are looking for what the truth is with this guy, I guess. Super high-end prospect coming into the league, has just struggled a lot with injuries, but an excellent strikeout pitcher when he's going right. Good lefty. But Alex, you mentioned this Cleveland lineup last 2 years against lefties, fourth in baseball with a 20.9% team strikeout rate for the active roster. The power numbers are down against lefties, 25th with a 173 ISOs and 11th with 79 home runs against lefties the last 2 seasons. But the strikeout rate, the ability to limit the strikeouts for this lineup kind of concerns me going to Rodon in a guy who puts a lot of guys on base. He did have 3 walks in the 5 innings in the first start as well. So puts a lot of guys on, could run into risk, could run into high pitch count pretty quickly if he's not really pounding the strike zone. Does that concern you at all, Max, with going to Carlos Rodon?
Yeah, for sure. I was actually going to try and sell you guys on a contrarian Cleveland stack, just because we have them projected at 2.5% right now. And yeah, I mean, they are much better versus lefties than they are righties. And they are pretty patient. And Rodon's big weakness is he does try to strike everybody out, and he nibbles a little bit and walks some guys. There's also some power in the middle of this lineup with Reyes and Ramirez. Those 2 guys are, especially Reyes, is interesting as a one-off for me.
Yeah, Fanduel, one of my favorite one-offs in the league, was part of my winning lineup a few nights ago, so really love getting to that guy, and no problem plugging him. My leading home run mark on the Indians for Fanduel, hitting cleanup in that lineup. Alex, are you with Max on that one? Maybe a little sneaky Indian stack today? Is that something that's interesting for you going up against Rodon here?
I think it's interesting because, the ownership is so low. I mean, most of the guys in our ownership projections are 5% or lower. So I think Cleveland is intriguing. The one thing I want to point out for everyone, though, is the weather in Chicago is really, really cold tonight. It's supposed to be 48 degrees at first pitch. So that doesn't just hurt you versus the starter. Whoever they bring in as a relief pitcher is going to be a little bit better, too. So it does hurt a lot.
Interesting. Yeah, that weather wasn't on my radar. So that's a terrible pun that I did not mean to make. I'm happy to make puns, but that wasn't one of them. But that weather wasn't something I was thinking about. So that's something I'm going to have to consider as I start crunching lineups after this. On the other side of this one, knowing that we've got the cold weather situation, any interest in Zach Plesac, who had a pretty nice season last year, 55 innings, 27.7% strikeout rate, only walked 2.9% of hitters, which is excellent, 0.80 whip last year. Really, really good. Made a lot of strides, 14.3% swinging strike rate, up from 9.5 the year before. Just really excellent spot. Going up against a tough lineup, though, they do strike out a lot against righties. 24th in baseball the last 2 years, 24.6% strikeout rate for that White Sox lineup. But there is talent in there. When you take Eloy out of it, the power numbers do dip, but we do still have a number of good hitters. Are we willing to go to Plesac? Are we thinking about maybe some White Sox? Alex, how are you handling this one?
Yeah, I think Plesac is interesting just because of the higher price options at DraftKings. He has one of the lower ownerships. When it comes down to projection, I only have him like a couple points lower. So that is a trade-off that I'm willing to make sometimes. On Fanduel, a little bit cheaper. I feel like his game translates better to Fanduel because he goes a little bit deeper in games than some of the other guys because he strikes less guys out. That's rewarded a little bit more on Fanduel, so I do see him as a pretty good option there. And on DraftKings is maybe a contrarian one.
I like it. Yeah, it's a pitcher I'll have some shares of. He didn't project as highly as I was expecting today in my model, but I do like the price tag at 8,300 on FanDuel, and I like what you're saying there about the longevity, the potential to get to that quality start bonus, and everything we get out of that on the blue side. Max, are you getting any White Sox bats coming back the other way against Zach Plesac? Any of the Luis Robert, Jose Abreu, Yohan Moncada kind of guys?
Nope. I love the Plesac leverage play. He was the other guy I was going to mention. He's usually known for less strikeouts, but 18% swinging strike rate in his last start was very impressive. And Alex mentioned the weather. That doesn't hurt. And the fact that he's projected 4 times less owned than McCullers at only $200 less, I think that's a really nice play in GPPs.
Yeah, that makes him very interesting. I hadn't spotted that, so that's a big killer spot On FanDuel, looks like he's getting a little bit of ownership, but again, somebody who's definitely not owned nearly as much as a guy like McCullers. So that's a spot that I'm going to explore a little bit more as I start building lineups. Looks like we got about 6 minutes to cover the last game. We should be fine coming into this one. We've got the Colorado Rockies with John Gray on the hill coming into Los Angeles. Rockies carrying a 2.91 implied total because the Dodgers have Dustin May on the hill. Dodgers have a 4.69 implied total going up against John Gray. Do we like either of the pitchers in this one? We talked about John Gray last time around in terms of his ability to pitch at Coors Field. A little bit bumpier on the road for the right-hander. Dodgers an excellent lineup. On the other side, Dustin May, guy who was in that hybrid role in the bullpen last season, had a dynamite year, had a bunch of clips going around on social media of his ridiculous two-seamer that comes in at 101 miles an hour and has an 18-inch horizontal break. Dynamite pitcher. A little bit of concern about the potential for length coming in, but he did pitch 6 innings, struck out 8 in his first start, walked 2, gave up 2 hits, no runs. Is this a spot for you, Max, for Dustin May, where you're going to roster him as a pitcher?
Yeah, I love May. Finally getting the strikeouts numbers that his stuff deserves. Last year, I feel like whenever we rostered him, he just didn't strike out as many guys. When, there were a lot of foul balls, people kept fouling the pitches off of him, and he wasn't getting the swings and misses the way he should with his excellent stuff. So, yeah, I mean, the matchup was amazing, right? Colorado is so bad right now. Yesterday, Bauer didn't even have his ace stuff, really, and just shut them down. I think May is in a great spot. And I think Gray is going to be the guy that I want to stack against here. I know he was what was he pitching, like a no-hitter for a while in his last start and then kind of gave it up. But I feel like he's being a little bit overvalued here. What do you guys think?
Alex, why don't you take that?
Yeah, I think Gray. It's hard to sort through all those numbers because the fact that he plays his home games in Colorado. But last year had a really, really rough year where he only struck out 12% of batters. That was a huge anomaly from previous years. So it was encouraging that over his first 2 starts, he's performed relatively well. I think the matchup, I probably wouldn't play Gray a ton in fantasy because of the matchup versus the Dodgers, but I definitely, I think the Dodgers are intriguing because the ownership is pretty low, but the fact that they're going against Gray isn't something that's making me excited about it.
Interesting. Okay. So on DraftKings, it does look like we're getting a little bit of positive leverage on the Dodgers. They're super expensive. But is it a spot that we're willing to pay up for? It sounded like, Max, you were definitely looking to do that, and Alex maybe a little bit more reluctant than Max. Is that a spot that, knowing there's a little bit of leverage on DK, maybe not so much on FanDuel, are you willing to play the leverage game with an excellent lineup for the Dodgers, Alex?
Yeah, I think the Dodgers are very intriguing, because we know the talent there. They have way more power than any other team on the slate today. And the ownership is really low because the prices are really high. I feel like you can make that up with some cheap pitchers that aren't that bad, especially with Morton on the slate. So I think Dodgers are intriguing, but the prices you're paying for them are pretty much top dollar for a spot that's not ideal. So I'm a little torn.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, that's one that I'm going to have to look at basically how I can figure out to pay for them, I guess, and what they combine with in here. Looks like my model imported the wrong price for pitcher Will Smith, so it's something I got to fix in here that's jumping out to me. But Max, you mentioned the Colorado team, just very, very weak. And over the last 2 seasons, terrible on the road, also terrible against right-handed pitching. 30th in baseball with a team WRC plus, 20% below average, 23rd with a 172 ISO, 28th with a 25.3% strikeout rate against righties, 27th with 127 home runs. I see no reason to roster Rockies bats here in what should be a great spot for May. We talked about. Do we think May puts up a dominant type start, or are we worried that he's going to come out after 6, I guess is more the question here.
I mean, I still think it can give you a game-breaking score where you're going to need him to win a GPP. So I think he has that kind of upside with his stuff, and it seems like he's getting more swings and misses this year. And it's really, I mean, I can get swings and misses against Colorado. Right? It's not difficult to do.
I'm with you. Alex, for you, any reason to get to Rockies bats before we move on and make a couple home run picks before we get out of here?
Definitely not. They're priced like they're playing in Coors Field for whatever reason. I just don't understand it. And I mean, spot versus Dodgers is they have a pretty bad park for batters, so there's absolutely no reason to go to the Rockies.
All right, then. Lead us off, boss. You got the honors. We got about a minute left. Who's your home run pick for the day?
All right. I always like going to a little bit of a contrarian team here. So let me go with the Mets because I feel like versus Zach Wheeler, they might go a little bit low on today and a little bit under the radar. So one guy I like for home run stuff is Michael Conforto. He has had a slump to start the season, but last year about 193 ISO. So batting 6, I think he could be in a good spot.
I like it. Max, where are you going?
I'm going to give you guys a double here. I'm going to say that Zunino and Adames go back to back.
Wow. All right. I will actually, I have to change mine because it was Jordan Alvarez from the chalky Astros. The rest of the top of my board is a bunch of Mariners and some Orioles. So I don't expect to get that game in. So going down the board a little ways, I'm going to pile on Tampa Bay as well. I'll take Randy Arozarena.
Beautiful.
All right, guys, I think that wraps us up. We're right on the 5 o'clock mark. We really appreciate it, everybody watching out there. Stay tuned. We've got a bunch of content coming up. NBA Deeper Dive up next with Lofty and Adam, followed by Live Before Lock with Josh and Greg. And then we've got PGA Live Before Lock coming up after that. Ben Rasa and Eric taking you in through PGA slate that I will probably not remember to wake up in time to enter again. We really appreciate everybody watching. Stay tuned for the other shows. We're out of here.